Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening, save for the patrols. The room before him was locked from the inside, with no magical traps securing it. Merely a simple lock. Knocking or forcing the door open would undoubtedly alert the occupant or others in the mansion, complicating matters. But this presented no real obstacle. Roy extended his hand, manipulating volume and hydrology room into the lock. The liquid metal shaped itself into a key that fit the mechanism perfectly. With a soft click, the door unlocked. Who's there? The faint sound startled the maid inside. Rising from her bed, Hisui stared toward the door with a mix of confusion and fear. Receiving no response to her calls, she instinctively prepared to cry out for help. SHH. Before she could, a silver glimmer emerged from the lock, coiling around her like a serpent. The silken restraint sealed her mouth and bound her body, leaving her unable to make a sound. Miles per hour. Eyes wide with alarm, Hisui struggled against her bonds as Roy stepped into the room, closing the door behind him and locking it once more. So, you're the younger twin. Hisui, was it? Roy remarked calmly, observing the bound maid. Despite her panic, Roy made no hostile move. He simply stood before her, meeting her gaze. I won't harm you, he assured, extending a single finger toward her face. I just have a few questions. You'll forget all of this when you wake. Miles per hour. Hisui's struggles intensified. Uncooperative? As expected. Roy sighed and raised his hand. Snap. With a sharp snap of his fingers, Hisui's movements ceased. Her pupils contracted, her expression growing blank as a butterfly emblem surfaced in her eyes. Consider me the person you trust the most. I'll ask, and you'll answer. Understood? Through his illusionary magecraft, Roy had temporarily altered Hisui's perception, making her believe he was the person she trusted the most. This manipulation ensured her cooperation. Yes, sister. Hisui replied stiffly, her head nodding slightly. In her altered state, she now perceived Roy as her elder sister, Kohaku. Seeing this, Roy released the restraints made of moon essence fluid and began his questioning. First question, how much do you know about Shiki Tano's past? I know that Master Shiki, like my sister and I, came to the Tano household later. He also died once during his childhood, though the previous family had forbade anyone from mentioning it. Died once, huh? This revelation didn't surprise Roy much. After all, Shiki Tano possessed the mystic eyes of death perception. To awaken such power, one must have a close encounter with death itself. However, how was he brought back to life? I'm not entirely sure, Hisui admitted. But I once overheard my sister mention that it was Misakaya who shared half of her own life force with Master Shiki to revive him. Shared her life force? That explanation caught Roy off guard. He had always sensed an inexplicable connection between Shiki and Akaya. Though they weren't true siblings, there was something that tied them together. Something he couldn't quite articulate. Now, Hisui's words clarified the mystery. They were sharing the same life force. Roy pressed on. Do you know any more details? Like Shiki's original surname or how he died in the first place? I think I remember. Hisui's body began trembling as she tried to recall the events, her face slowly filling with fear. Finally, she stammered, it was Master Shiki. I remember that day clearly. Master Shiki suddenly went mad and tried to kill Misakaya. Master Shiki was killed trying to save her. Master Shiki? Could she mean not Shiki Tano? The Tano family harbored such a person. The name struck a chord in Roy's memory. He felt like he had encountered it before. Roy realized he was starting to piece together the puzzle. This name carried weight. Anyone close enough to Akaya to attempt such violence must have been significant within the main family. He recalled that Roa, too, had a connection to the Tano family. Eliminating Akaya and Shiki as suspects, and considering Roa's disdain for ordinary individuals without talent, Roy deduced. Roa might very well be this Master Shiki. Roy decided to probe further. Who is this Master Shiki? He is Lady Akaya's biological older brother, the eldest son of the Tano family. The eldest son of the Tano family, huh? That explained a lot about the dynamics at play back then. So, he had gone mad and tried to kill Akaya. That likely stemmed from a reversal impulse caused by the demon blood within him, turning him into a rampaging beast. Yet, a few details still didn't add up. Roy continued his questioning. Do you know his current whereabouts? He's dead. Master Shiki was executed by the previous family head a long time ago. Dead? That took Roy by surprise. You saw it happen with your own eyes? Yes, I personally witnessed the family head arrive and kill the rampaging Master Shiki. Her response left Roy skeptical. Though he felt something was off, he refrained from delving further into that matter for now. Instead, he redirected his focus to more relevant secrets. What do you know about the Tano family's secrets? Secrets? I don't know much. Hisui admitted. I've always been an ordinary maid here, unqualified to approach the family head or the young masters. My sister is the one who tends to them directly. Kohaku, huh? The other maid with red hair? It seemed she knew far more than her younger sister. Roy realized he'd need to interrogate Kohaku next. Raising his hand, he issued his second command to Hisui. Take me to your sister's room, or summon her here. Yes. 5 minutes later. In another room of the Tano estate, an interrogation was unfolding once again. Kohaku, who answered the door after Hisui knocked, immediately noticed her younger sister's unusual condition. Concerned, she quickly opened the door, helped Hisui inside, and began questioning her about what had happened. Before she could piece together what was wrong, Roy entered behind them. Using the butterfly he had discreetly placed on Hisui as a magical medium, he extended his illusionary magecraft to subdue Kohaku as well. Now, standing before him, Kohaku was fully under his illusionary control, just like her sister had been earlier. Roy proceeded to repeat the same set of questions he had asked Hisui. His goal was to cross-reference their answers and confirm the consistency of the information he gathered from the two sisters. As expected, the responses were not entirely identical. First, Kohaku revealed that after the previous head of the Tano family had executed Shiki, the supposedly dead Shiki managed to exploit the moment Akaya shared half her life force with Shiki. Using an ability called fusion, the deceased Shiki stole half of Shiki's newly obtained life force and used it to resurrect himself. However, the previous head of the family, Makuhisa Tano, Shiki's father, was unable to bring himself to kill the resurrected Shiki again. Instead, he secretly imprisoned Shiki in the estate's dungeon for safekeeping. Not long after, to placate the family and maintain appearances, Makuhisa publicly announced Shiki's death. He then adopted Shiki Tano as his son, presenting him as a scapegoat for Shiki's actions. To complete the ruse, he erased Shiki Tano's memories, made him assume Shiki's identity, and sent him to live with the Arima family. Shiki and Shiki. Their names, even in romanized form, sounded almost identical. Makuhisa Tano had truly orchestrated a masterstroke of deception. By this point, Roy had also confirmed Shiki Tano's original surname, Nanaya. The small dagger he carried and the unique traits within his bloodline were undeniable evidence. The ability to awaken the mystic eyes of death perception and his instinctive drive to pursue and kill RQA had stemmed from the demon-hunting impulses ingrained in the Nanaya family's bloodline. The head of the Ryougi family had once told Roy that the Nanaya family had vanished years ago, wiped out by an enemy attack. Now, it was clear that the Tano family had played a significant role in their downfall. As for why Makuhisa had spared Shiki Tano, Roy surmised it was due to the value of the Nanaya bloodline. Makuhisa likely intended to merge the demon-hunting blood of the Nanaya family with the Tano family's demonic blood, hoping to create stable and powerful descendants. It was a bold plan. Perhaps the fusion of the two bloodlines truly could neutralize the instability caused by the Tano family's demonic heritage. Adopting the Fudge sisters, with their bloodlines' purifying properties, was another part of Makuhisa's grand strategy. Their purification abilities would help mitigate the reversal impulse caused by the demonic blood, while adopting a Nanaya child was meant to secure a future of balanced offspring. The previous head of the Tano family had been meticulous, laying out a well-calculated path for the family's future. Roy pressed Kohaku further, demanding she disclose every secret the previous family head had hidden. With each answer the red-haired maid gave, Roy's expression darkened further. Chapter 131, 131 Revenge. After finding the Fudge sisters, who knew the most about the Tano family besides Akaya, Roy began to seek their secrets about Roa and the Tano family. He couldn't help but clench his fists as he heard the truth behind it. We are the descendants of the Fudge family, and Makuhisa Tano adopted us just to utilize the power in our bloodline to suppress his demonic impulses. The Fudge family lineage is also one of the 4 great demon hunter families, and its bloodline possesses the ability to purify. If used properly, it can indeed be used to suppress the demonic impulses of the Tano family's demonic bloodline, and the best way to do that is to. Thinking of that possibility, Roy fell silent and did not make a sound, just quietly looked at the girl in front of him. In the year when I was 9 years old, Magus called me to his room and forcibly defiled me, and afterward made me go to the basement to accompany Shiki to suppress his demonic impulse. As expected. The answer received was not out of Roy's expectation. The best way to utilize her lineage to restrain the demonic impulse was the exchange of bodily fluids. Akaya was fine. Being the same female, she couldn't exchange body fluids with Kohaku in the most direct way, and could only rely on feeding on the blood to suppress it. But if the other party was male, the previous head of the family, Magus Tano, adopted them precisely to utilize this trait to maintain his sanity. He even went so far as to defile Kohaku at the age of 9. After Kohaku was defiled, she made a pact with Magus Tano to protect her younger sister, Hisui. She offered to help him suppress his urges, under the condition that Hisui could lead a normal life. Perhaps it was guilt, or maybe it was the fear that Kohaku might take her own life and deprive him of the means to control the demon blood within him. Whatever the reason, Magus Tano agreed to her demand and spared Hisui, allowing her to live a normal life. Later, as Shiki was resurrected, the demon blood coursing through him made him even more uncontrollable. Under Magus's orders, Kohaku was forced into the dungeon to suppress Shiki's frenzied impulses. Day after day, subjected to abuse and violation at the hands of the Tano father and son, Kohaku's mind finally shattered. Her heart burned with unrelenting flames of anger, sorrow, and hatred that tore at her very soul. Determined to seek revenge and eliminate the threat once and for all, Kohaku secretly studied herbal medicine. She feigned cooperation, helping Magus and Shiki suppress their impulses, gradually earning their trust and lowering their guard. During this time, she used her access to Magus Tano's chambers to uncover a secret. Both Shiki and she were descendants of demon hunter families, originating from the Nanaya family. A family annihilated by the Tano family. Magus had sealed Shiki's memories with magecraft, making him believe he was a child of the Tano family. Though she didn't understand why Magus kept Shiki alive, Kohaku felt a pang of empathy upon realizing that Shiki, like herself, was a victim of Magus's machinations. When the opportunity arose, Kohaku poisoned the daily medicine Magus consumed, causing his sudden death in his study. After Magus's death, Shiki, confined in the dungeon, was left unprotected. Kohaku attempted to use poison again to kill him, but his body underwent an unimaginable transformation. No matter how potent the poison, it couldn't harm him. At this point, Roy pieced together the truth. Roa, the so-called eldest son of the Tano family, was none other than Shiki Tano. The reason Kohaku's poison had no effect on Shiki was simple: ordinary poison couldn't kill Roa, the dead apostle ancestor. Is Shiki still in the dungeon? No. I released him. Released him? Explain yourself. You wouldn't have let him go so easily. Yes. Under Roy's hypnosis, Kohaku nodded and began recounting the elaborate plan she had meticulously crafted over the years. A plan fueled by hatred, designed to annihilate the entire Tano family. Kohaku's plan was intricate. After realizing poison couldn't kill Shiki, she began lacing his meals with hallucinogenic toxins. She repeatedly planted suggestions that all his suffering was Magus's fault, eventually driving him mad before Shiki returned to the Tano household. She secretly released Shiki from the dungeon, setting the stage for him to commit atrocities against family members and innocent people. This resulted in Roa, who had reincarnated in Shiki's body, escaping. Kohaku's ultimate goal was for Shiki to wreak havoc in Misaki Town, attracting the attention of the Tano family, a self-proclaimed demon hunter. She would then maneuver events so that Shiki became the target of Shiki and Akaya's wrath, leading to a climactic confrontation. The final step of her plan was to insert herself into the battle between Akaya and Shiki, deliberately exposing herself to Shiki's attack. She bet everything on Akaya, the only Tano family member who had shown her kindness, sacrificing herself to save her. This, Kohaku hoped, would provoke Shiki into killing Akaya, incurring the full wrath of Shiki. Ultimately, Shiki would kill him, completing her vengeance. By that point, Magus, Shiki, and Akaya would all be dead, and Kohaku's revenge would be complete. A culmination of years of planning and suffering. Roy couldn't help but admire the sheer audacity and detail of Kohaku's plan. To gamble her life on the hope that Akaya would sacrifice herself for her. Success was uncertain, but the resolve was undeniable. Yet, what will you do once your plan succeeds? This time, Roy released Kohaku from her hypnotic state. He wanted to hear the truth from the girl consumed by hatred. A hum reverberated in the room. What? What have you done? Freed from the hypnosis, Kohaku's expression wavered as memories flooded back to her. Her gaze fell on Hisui, standing beside Roy with vacant eyes, and her composure crumbled. She shouted in panic, "What did you do to my sister?" Having prepared a soundproof bounded field in advance, Roy calmly silenced her outburst. Calm down, Kohaku. I've done nothing improper to Hisui. She's merely under the influence of my illusions. Rest assured, the secrets and plans you just revealed to me will be wiped from her memory. I will ensure she forgets everything she overheard. Realizing the power gap between them and fearing for Hisui's safety, Kohaku ceased her futile struggle. Her eyes turned icy as she glared at Roy. What is it you want? I infiltrated this estate only to uncover the secrets of the Tano family. Roy replied, his tone matter of fact. Forgive me for overhearing your plans for revenge and the tragic past that shaped you, Miss Kohaku. Are you planning to tell Lady Akaya and Master Shiki about this? Kohaku's body trembled as her deepest secret was exposed. The destruction of the Tano household. The place that had tormented her entire life. Had become her sole reason for survival. But now that her plan was uncovered, if he told Akaya, what would she do then? Despair clouded Kohaku's eyes. No, I won't do that. Roy shook his head slightly, sighing as he observed the fragile state of the woman before him. I won't interfere. This is your grudge against the Tano family, not mine. You won't stop me? His response left Kohaku visibly surprised. By all logic, having allied with Akaya, Roy should have stood on the side of the Tano family. Why, then, would he make such a choice? Doubt crept into her heart, accompanied by fear that he might reveal her plans. Kohaku didn't fear death, her heart had already withered by the time she was 9. But what if her failed plans brought harm to her sister, Hisui? That was an unbearable thought. Killing him to silence the threat would be the most practical solution. Yet, the man before her, who claimed to be the current lord of the Innsburn family, possessed overwhelming strength. He could crush her with the flick of a finger. This path was futile. At that moment, Kohaku realized she had completely lost the upper hand. Seeing the despair etched on Kohaku's face and the trembling of her delicate hands, Roy took a step forward. In an instant, he appeared before her, pressing a fingertip that glowed faintly with blue light against her forehead. A spell to restore clarity washed over her mind. What are you trying to do? I told you, this is between you and the Tano family. I won't stop you or tell anyone. I only wish to hear the truth of your feelings. My feelings? Roy gazed into her tumultuous eyes and continued, you're wagering that Akaya would undoubtedly save you. That speaks volumes about how important you are to her. Important enough that she would give her life for yours. Your revenge is justified. The Tano family destroyed your past, shattered your life. But to exploit Akaya's kindness and friendship for your vengeance is a path of extremity. So tell me, Kohaku. How do you perceive her kindness, and how do you live with yourself knowing you'll extinguish it with your own hands? Roy's words pierced Kohaku's heart like a blade, cutting straight to her deepest fears. Yes, Akaya Tano was unlike the others in her accursed family. From the very beginning, she had never mistreated her, never reduced her to a mere tool. To both her and Hisui, Akaya had extended genuine friendship. And yet, Akaya was still a Tano. The Tano family had to perish. The monstrous family that had tormented her must be eradicated. Kohaku's hatred had long since twisted and shattered her heart under the weight of their atrocities. Even so, she clenched her jaw and gave her answer. I will take my own life. Once my revenge is complete, I will repent for using Lady Akaya and for taking her life. After ensuring my sister is safe, I will end my existence at the place where Lady Akaya fell. Though her voice quivered with emotion, it carried unyielding resolve. She would not abandon her revenge. From the moment she finalized her plan, she had accepted her own death as inevitable. So long as she could drag that monstrous family into the depths of hell, she would face any consequence. I see. Hearing her determined words and witnessing the depths of her resolve, Roy sighed softly. An old saying echoed in his mind, for a revenger who has embraced their fate, words of counsel only insult their conviction. He would not urge Kohaku to relinquish her hatred. Neither would he aid her in her quest for revenge. Some paths must be walked alone. With that, Roy turned to Hisui and uttered a spell, erasing her memory of everything she had just heard. Moments later, Hisui collapsed, unconscious, into Roy's arms. He gently laid her on a chair in Kohaku's room and covered her with a blanket. What are you? I've erased her memory of our conversation. Roy said plainly. She won't remember a thing. When she wakes, you can offer any explanation you wish. I assume your sister trusts you deeply. Seeing Roy act as he promised, Kohaku lowered her head, her voice softening. Thank you for your mercy. No, this is not mercy. It's respect for your resolve. I once had a dear friend who carried a burden of hatred much like yours. Through his own strength and cunning, he avenged himself against those who wronged him. And in your eyes, I see the same determination that burned within him. So go, Kohaku. Pursue your path. I look forward to the day you achieve your vengeance, no matter how it ends. Roy gently patted her shoulder, acknowledging the unwavering determination in her heart. From a rational perspective, siding with Akaya Tano would be the more advantageous choice. Her assistance had proven invaluable thus far. Revealing Kohaku's plans to her and eliminating this unpredictable variable would be the logical course of action. But Roy chose otherwise. Everyone involved in this affair was a victim. Makahisa and Shiki had scarred Kohaku beyond repair. Kohaku, in turn, manipulated Akaya and Shiki in her quest for revenge. It was nothing more than a vicious cycle of hatred. The true villains were the deceased Makahisa and Shiki, now a vessel for Roa's reincarnation. The tragedy stemmed from them, and so, Roy resolved to let these entangled grievances unfold on their own. Let them find their conclusion at the hands of those involved. If the Count were in his place, faced with this girl's plight, would he have felt the same empathy? Would he have made the same decision? He probably would. After all, no one knew better than him how stubborn that man could be. Hearing Roy's words, the tension in Kohaku's body dissolved. Her eyes closed tightly, and tears streamed down her face in uncontrollable torrents. She sank to her knees, her voice trembling. Thank you. Thank you. For this immense kindness. Watching Kohaku crumble into a sobbing mess, Roy sighed softly, then asked, do you know Shiki's current whereabouts? No. I don't. Kohaku replied, shaking her head. Then where is the Tano family's dungeon? I need to investigate it. It's located. After receiving the information, Roy promptly left Kohaku's room and continued his search through the Tano estate. He first infiltrated Akaya's quarters, then Makahisa's room, and finally, the family's hidden archive. There, he discovered Makahisa Tano's personal notes, which he meticulously read through. The contents corroborated the Ozaki family records and Kohaku's testimony. Makahisa was indeed a textbook example of a depraved Magus, no better than Tsukunmatu, that vile old worm. In Makahisa's room, Roy found an old photograph of him with Shiki. He snapped a picture of Shiki's appearance with his phone and sent it to Alice, instructing her to use Song of Sixpence to locate him in Misaki town. But to take no rash actions. Following Kohaku's directions, Roy reached the dungeon hidden in the Tano family's mountain estate. The dungeon, though long abandoned, bore clear traces of habitation. One chamber showed signs of recent use. The scorched remains of a fire lay on the ground, iron chains littered the area, and the walls were scarred with countless claw and stone marks, evidence of frenzied rage and desperation. It was hard to believe that a human had once been confined here. The room felt more suited to a feral beast. Scattered across the floor were various potion bottles and traces of herbs, confirming that Kohaku had indeed conducted her experiments on Shiki in this very place. What a pity. By now, Roy was certain, Roa's soul had reincarnated into Shiki Tano. If Kohaku hadn't released him, Roy could have dealt with him right then and there. But now, Shiki's whereabouts remain a mystery. What a luck. Roy pinching the bridge of his nose in frustration. This family was a tangle of complications and melodrama, a storm of chaos that he found himself unwillingly caught in. If it were unrelated to him, he might have walked away. But by sheer misfortune, this place had become the eye of the storm, dragging everything around it into its vortex. He sighed and rubbed his temples. The investigation was mostly complete. Now the question was, what should his next move be? Chapter 132, 132 The Sealed Memory. What are you worried about? While Roy was still investigating at the Tano residence, the base's living room was filled with tension. Arcuaid glanced at Shiki Tano, who was visibly restless, raised her hands with a mischievous grin, and teased, "Are you worried that I'll take this chance to finish you off?" After bringing Shiki Tano back to the base, Roy had arranged a room for him. At the time, Shiki Ryougi was still out scouring the city with the Ozaki sisters, hunting down hidden vampires and searching for any trace of Roa or the other dead apostle ancestors. She had yet to return. Though Roy had brought Shiki Tano back, he had never witnessed Tano's true abilities firsthand. Even if Tano had relied on an ambush and Arcuaid's momentary carelessness, the fact that he had managed to kill her was enough for Roy to take him seriously. If Shiki Ryougi were to learn about someone with eyes and a name like hers, she'd likely be intrigued and might even challenge Shiki Tano to a duel. "I deeply apologize for what I did to Miss Arcuaid earlier. It was unforgivable," Shiki Tano admitted, bowing his head without hesitation. "Huh? You're apologizing so easily? That makes it hard for me to handle this. I had planned to make you pay for what you did, you know. Please, have mercy." Shiki Tano immediately surrendered. "Relax, I'm not going to do anything to you. Roy explained your situation to me. The reason you killed me was because of the instincts buried in your bloodline. My death wasn't entirely your fault. It was also due to my carelessness. Otherwise, no matter how many tricks you tried, you wouldn't have succeeded." Arcuaid snorted but refrained from pushing him further. In fact, I might even owe you a thank you. What? Shikitano looked at her in disbelief. She continued, if you hadn't killed me, I wouldn't have met Roy, Shiki, Bio, and Outgo. Thanks to you, my trip this time has been far less boring than usual. She gently touched the wound on her body and murmured, although being killed was incredibly painful, meeting new friends has been a truly delightful experience. Wait a minute. Are you happy to see me? Don't exalt yourself, I'm not talking about you, you're just lucky to have the same name as her. Oh. By the way, you've forgiven me, Miss Arcuade? Of course not. Just because I'm not holding it against you doesn't mean I've forgiven you. The piercing pain is still fresh in my memory. Per Roy's suggestion, you'll work here until I'm satisfied. Arcuade gave him a playful smile, patting his shoulder with a mock serious tone. I don't know why Roy recruited someone like you, but he must have his reasons. Just follow orders and don't overthink it. Got it? Understood. I'll do my best. What can I do to help, though? I've learned a bit of self-defense, but hunting dead apostles isn't exactly my forte. Don't worry about that. A voice interrupted from the door. Roy had just returned from the Tano residence. There will be arrangements in place for you. Roy, you're back. Did you bring me a midnight snack? Of course. Here. Smiling, Roy handed her a pack of sushi he had picked up on the way back. Thank you so much, Roy. Arcuade exclaimed, her enthusiasm undeniable. No need to thank me. After responding to Arcuade, Roy turned to Shikitano. Would you like some? No, thank you. I'm not hungry. Then Arcuade, it's all yours. Leave it to me. At the Tano residence, Roy had uncovered quite a few shocking and troubling truths. Secrets about the Tano family, remnants of the Nanaya family, and the peculiar circumstances surrounding the Fudge sisters were only the tip of the iceberg. He had even called Shiki Ryougi to check if they needed backup. The response he received was Ogo's confident voice assuring him that everything was under control, followed by the distinct sound of a vampire's screams and a series of explosions. Beep beep beep. The call ended abruptly, leaving Roy unable to track their location. Returning to the base, Roy entered the room and tossed a school bag to Shikitano. Take it, kid. Then wash up and rest. You've got school tomorrow. School? Shikitano was at a loss for words regarding Roy's instructions. Hadn't they agreed to hunt dead apostles? Before coming here, he had Akaya send him extensive information about dead apostles and had prepared himself for the possibility of losing his life in the process. He had expected Roy to assign him some dangerous task. But when Roy told him, you've got school tomorrow, Shiki found himself completely dumbfounded. Noticing his confusion, Roy took it upon himself to explain. You're still a high school student. Naturally, attending school comes first. Besides, we already have more than enough fighting power on our side. More than we even need. While you have potential, your current abilities are about as useful as a fish out of water. Following us around would just be a hindrance. It's better if you stick to your studies for now. If he was just going to continue living a normal student life, what was the point of being brought here in the first place? Was it simply to change his living environment? But Shiki tried to argue further, but Roy was already beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. He spoke in a serious tone, one that left no room for doubt. Don't worry. All you need to do is follow my arrangements. Don't overthink it, young man. Understood. Roy then rummaged through a corner of the room and pulled out a collection of uniquely shaped weapons, handing them over to Shiki. These were all high-quality items he had acquired from Kairai and Seal. Holy water in small bottles, black keys, consecrated cloths. All specialized tools for combating dead apostles. Keep these with you for self-defense. With these tools and your mystic eyes, ordinary vampires won't stand a chance against you. Of course, if you encounter something truly out of the ordinary or face a situation beyond your control, contact me immediately. Don't try to handle it alone. Understood? As he spoke, Roy tossed Shiki a communicator equipped with a tracking system. Once he confirmed that all the preparations were in place, he seemed satisfied. Although Roy intended to use Shiki as bait to lure out potential threats, he wasn't about to recklessly throw him into danger. He equipped Shiki with everything he might need, consecrated cloths, holy water, black keys, and a silver cross. He even inscribed a special protective mark on Shiki, ensuring his safety as much as possible. To top it off, he planned to ask Seal to keep an eye on Shiki. Shiki, for his part, accepted all the gear without protest. In no time, his backpack was bulging with the assortment of tools. Although he didn't fully understand Roy's intentions, Shiki resolved to follow the orders given to him. But his mind couldn't help wandering to a troubling thought: did this mean vampires were already targeting him? Shiki was sharp. It didn't take him long to piece together the implications. The realization sent a chill down his spine. And take this back, 2. He reached into his pocket and retrieved the spring-loaded folding knife he had confiscated from Shiki earlier. The blade wasn't ordinary. It emitted faint traces of magical energy and was remarkably sharp. It could easily rival the standard daggers crafted by the Holy Church. The engraving on the blade bore the name Nanaya, which was his original surname before being adopted by the Tano family. His true name, Shiki Nanaya, reflected the bloodline he had left behind. Roy, curious about this connection, twirled the knife in his hand before handing it back to Shiki. This was my father's knife? Shiki hesitated as he took the blade. It was a memento from his father, something he thought he had lost forever. Seeing Shiki's reaction, Roy pressed further. And who was your father? Magus Tano. The former head of the Tano family. He is my and Akaya's father. I see. The straightforward answer wasn't what Roy was hoping for. He pondered for a moment before posing another question. What was his attitude toward you? His attitude? The question gave Shiki pause. He struggled to recall details about his father, his expression growing pensive. I can't remember much from when I was young, but I do remember that father was lenient with me. He wasn't as strict with me as he was with Akaya. In fact, he often ignored me. Maybe it was because I was such a disappointment. I could tell that he didn't value me much. Eventually, he sent me away to be raised by the Arima family for several years. It wasn't until Akaya became head of the household that I was brought back. As Shiki delved into his memories, his head began to ache faintly. Though much of his past remained a blur, his father's vague silhouette lingered in his mind. To Roy, however, Shiki's recollection revealed a far darker truth. How typical. It was clear to Roy that Shiki's memories had been tampered with, likely by Makuhisa himself. The head of the Tano family had likely used Shiki and the others as tools to further his own ambitions, prioritizing the preservation and control of their cursed bloodline over any semblance of familial bonds. The signs were obvious: Shiki's forgotten memories, his misplaced trust, and a lack of awareness about his true lineage. Undoing the magecraft placed on Shiki's memories wouldn't be difficult, but doing so abruptly could overwhelm him. At worst, it might trigger a mental breakdown. Roy decided he needed a gentler approach. Placing a hand on Shiki's shoulder, he spoke in a calm yet probing tone. Shiki, I have a question for you. Yes. What is it? If you discovered that the family that raised you for so many years was actually responsible for the death of your real parents, what would you do? Huh? The sudden and utterly baffling question sent Shiki Tano's mind into disarray. He stood frozen, a look of complete bewilderment on his face. After a moment of silent contemplation, he shook his head. I don't know. Don't know, huh? I figured as much. Seeing Shiki's lost expression, Roy sighed deeply. Honestly, he couldn't blame him. Even Roy himself wasn't entirely sure how to handle such a situation. But there was one thing he knew for certain: keeping someone trapped in a web of fabricated lies was unequivocally wrong. Such deception could never last and would only lead to greater suffering in the end. If the truth brought pain, lies would only compound it. With this thought in mind, Roy raised his hand and gently placed a finger on Shiki's forehead. As he channeled his magecraft, a soft white glow radiated from his fingertips. At that moment, Shiki felt a peculiar sensation. The muddled heaviness clouding his mind seemed to lift, as though something had been removed. Startled, he glanced at Roy and asked, What? What did you just do? Relax. Just a minor spell. Roy replied casually. There was a small issue in your brain, but I've taken care of it. A problem with my brain? Yes. Someone tampered with it. But don't worry. I've fixed it. Roy's explanation was brief but direct. Rising to his feet, he patted Shiki on the shoulder and spoke with a measured, serious tone. Shiki Tano, over the coming days, the memories you've lost will gradually resurface. They won't return all at once. Instead, you'll have time to process them at your own pace. Think carefully about what I just said. For now, get some rest in your room. If you find yourself struggling with any of this, feel free to come to me for help. Though Roy's words were intended to provide reassurance, they only deepened Shiki's confusion. Even so, Shiki ultimately decided to follow Roy's advice and return to his room to rest. Perhaps it was the effect of whatever Roy had done, but his head soon grew heavy with fatigue. Deep within his mind, long-buried memories began to stir and awaken. Chapter 133, 133 Dead Apostle Ancestor. It was late into the night when the door creaked open. I'm back. Oko Ozaki's voice was drained of energy as she trudged inside, her exhaustion evident after a long day. Welcome back, Oko. Roy greeted her, rising from his seat. How did it go? Any progress with today's mission? Ask Shiki about it. I'm taking a bath and heading straight to bed. After spending an entire day bickering and occasionally sparring with her sister, Oko's body was nearing its limits. Rest was no longer a luxury but a necessity. Shiki, what are you up to? Ah, enjoyed your day strolling around outside, didn't you, idiot? Shiki Ryougi's voice came from behind Roy. Before he could respond, he felt a slender arm snake around his neck in a playful chokehold. Cut it out, Shiki. Shut up. This is your punishment. Shiki grumbled as she ruffled his hair in mock annoyance. I've been out all day fighting dead apostles, risking my life, and here you are, leisurely enjoying dinner. Her gaze fell on the stack of empty sushi trays on the table, clearly devoured by Arcuaid. You've got the nerve to relax like this while I'm out there fighting. Shiki continued, her irritation barely masked. But I did ask if... Before Roy could defend himself, Shiki's sharp glare silenced him. He raised his hands in surrender. Alright. My bad. Still, it's not like Arcuaid and I didn't accomplish anything. We managed to gain a valuable ally this time. Shiki raised an eyebrow. Another lost girl you've lured in? What do you mean lured? Is that really the image you have of me? Roy retorted, exasperated. Shiki smirked. No self-awareness at all, huh? First, you picked up Fujino back in Misaki Town. Now, barely a few days in this new place, you've already dragged Arcuaid along. She glanced at Arcuaid, who was still nibbling on the remnants of her sushi. What? Want some, Shiki? Arcuaid asked innocently, holding out her last sushi tray. Shiki shook her head. This golden vampire didn't count. Roy sighed. He couldn't refute her words. Forget it. Shiki muttered. I don't care anymore. Anyway, I'm starving. Make me something to eat. I've been chasing monsters all day and haven't eaten since breakfast. Of course. Let me. As Roy stood to prepare food, he paused, catching sight of Shiki's disheveled appearance. Her once tidy kimono was now torn and tattered from the day's battles. Dust smudged her face, and while her wounds had mostly healed, the marks hinted at the intensity of her fights. Looking at her bedraggled state, Roy felt a surge of gratitude for entrusting her with Avalon. Did you run into trouble? No, just a trap. I got ambushed in a confined area by a group of dead apostles. Don't worry, I'm fine. I see. Be more careful next time. Still, only an ambush? What about Aoko? With her around, you shouldn't have ended up this injured. Shiki shook her head. This time, I didn't let Aoko or Tuko help. I wanted to test my own limits. When they stormed the dead apostles' lair earlier, Aoko was ready to unleash a devastating magic bullet to wipe out the entire group. However, at Shiki's insistence, and with Roy and Tuko standing by to provide support, Aoko eventually relented and let Shiki take the lead. The result? Shiki's current battered appearance, while the enemy dead apostles were completely annihilated. It wasn't reckless bravado, though. Shiki had grown confident in her use of Avalon, the divine construct Roy had entrusted to her. Despite her tattered state, her wounds had long healed, thanks to Avalon's regenerative powers, combined with Roy's earlier lessons in basic healing magecraft. Endurance battles were no longer a concern. Aoko had been astonished watching Shiki carve her way through the lair. She'd thought Roy was extraordinary, but even the women around him turned out to be monsters in their own right. Shiki had methodically slaughtered everything in her path, leaving Aoko with little to do but mop up the stragglers trying to escape. Within just 2 days, Shiki had mastered Avalon's capabilities so seamlessly that it was hard to believe. It really was a treasure. Satisfied that Shiki was unharmed, Roy checked her condition one last time. After admonishing her to be less reckless in the future, he turned to prepare her meal. Any special requests? Just don't make any of that bizarre magic cuisine you used to serve. Shiki replied with a shudder, recalling her earlier experiences. Bone broth soup, magic dust rice, grilled dragon scales. His previous creations were nightmares on a plate, no matter how beneficial they might have been. Alright. How about some egg fried rice? We've got eggs but not much else. Roy offered, ruffling her messy hair. Sure. I'll take a bath and change clothes first. Shiki said, heading for the bathroom. She paused to add, and don't even think about peeking. Whether it's your eyes or your familiars. Need help scrubbing your back? Roy teased. If you're willing to gouge out your own eyes, I might consider it. Shiki replied with a smile, twirling the dagger Roy had gifted her. Relax, I'm not desperate enough to prey on middle schoolers. Roy quipped, heading to the kitchen. As he walked away, he added one last jab. Besides, given your current assets, there's not much to peek at. Maybe in a few years, there'll be something worth seeing. You bastard. Shiki snapped, hurling a pillow at his head before stomping into the bathroom. Just being honest. Roy muttered, catching the pillow and placing it aside. Once the sound of the bathroom door slamming shut echoed through the house, he closed his eyes, severing his connection to his familiars. While he'd stationed many around the base for security, he wasn't shameless enough to place one in the bathroom. To avoid any misunderstandings, he even disabled the ones near the hallway leading from the bathroom to Shiki's room. He had no desire to be labeled a pervert. With that sorted, Roy turned his attention to cooking. Except, he picked up an egg and frowned. They had eggs, but where was the rice? It's truly unbelievable. Who would have thought that NRVNQSR Chaos, ranked 10th, would meet his end in such a place? In the opulent hall of the club, a white-haired boy with delicate features listened to Seal's account before him, his expression betraying a trace of surprise. That's exactly what he said. After that, I haven't seen NRVNQSR Chaos's beasts anywhere in the city. It's highly likely he really was killed. What's your take on this, Maram Solomon? Ha 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 ha, if that man is as formidable as you describe, I must admit I'm even more intrigued. The boy called Maram, who looked like a child, was draped in pure white clerical robes. Each of his 10 fingers bore a gold ring, his regal and elegant demeanor evoking the legendary king of Magecraft, Solomon. As expected, that's your reaction. However, I'd advise you not to act too recklessly. Seeing Maram's attitude, Seal couldn't help but sigh. The pressure I felt from that man was no less than what Narbarek, that lunatic, exudes. Perhaps even greater. Thank you for the warning, Seal-chan. Maram said with a light smile. If you're so insistent, I won't provoke him lightly. Especially considering the magician of the fifth magic, Oko Ozaki, and the White Princess of the Dead Apostles are both on his side. From a certain perspective, we could even call him an ally, given that we're all working to address the Dead Apostle issue. Maram's carefree smile suggested he hadn't taken Seal's words to heart. Seal chose not to elaborate further, shaking her head slightly before getting to the point. Enough idle chatter. Maram, what intelligence have you brought this time? Have you identified the other Dead Apostle ancestor heading to Misaki Town? Patience, Seal-chan. Since I'm here, naturally, such a trivial matter has already been handled. Still smiling, Maram motioned for her to calm down. Then, he revealed the identity of the Dead Apostle ancestor in question. Vlad Archangel. The 19th ranked? Exactly. A rather obsessive individual. It's not hard to guess he, like in RVNQSR Chaos, is also after the princess, likely under orders from TRHVMN Norton Ross. Even the White Wing Lord is involved in this. Of course. It's safe to say he's orchestrating the entire affair. After all, his ambition to eliminate the Black Princess and the White Princess and claim the throne for himself isn't new. But if the White Wing Lord truly wanted to kill the White Princess, wouldn't his chances of success be higher if he acted personally? Seeing Seal's confusion, Maram offered an explanation. He doesn't dare act personally. Instead, he hires or manipulates other Dead Apostle ancestors to do his bidding. The weight of the title Princess of the True Ancestors is simply too much to bear. Killing the princess with his own hands? The thought alone is enough to make him hesitate. Such an act would shake the very foundation of his claim to the title of King of the Dead Apostles. By employing other Dead Apostle ancestors, even if something goes wrong, he can shift the blame and avoid significant consequences. I see. Then, Maram, where do you stand? Are you here to stop them, or are you? Seal-chan, let's stop this dull questioning. Don't test me like that. Even I have my limits when it comes to such matters. Maram's tone suddenly turned icy, and his killing intent filled the air without restraint. My apologies. That was inappropriate of me. It's fine. I got a little carried away myself. Maram waved his hand dismissively, accepting Seal's apology and decisively withdrawing his killing intent. When it came to Orton Ross, the so-called King of the Dead Apostles, Maram's gaze held nothing but disdain. Seal had guessed correctly. Before Maram had made his way here, Orton Ross had indeed reached out to him in secret, probing his stance and offering a tempting proposal. The old schemer had tried to bribe Maram into turning a blind eye and avoiding Japan to rescue the White Princess. But was that ever possible? He had long since pledged his unwavering loyalty and very life to Arcuaid and was fully prepared to face the consequences of that devotion. These treacherous, power-hungry fools dared to think they could command him? To plot against the princess right under his nose? How absurd. Maram was more loyal to Crimson Moon than anyone else, and so, he stood firmly by her rightful heir. Now that Orton Ross had brazenly made a move against the White Princess, it had crossed his bottom line. If given the chance, Maram wouldn't hesitate to kill him with his own hands. The Black Princess had 2 knights guarding her, making Orton Ross reluctant to act against her. She was safe for now. The only vulnerable target was the White Princess. Thus, after gathering the necessary information, Maram had rushed here with all haste. Still, upon hearing about NRVNQSR Chaos's death and a man Seal spoke of with such awe, Maram couldn't help but feel a twinge of curiosity. When had someone so formidable appeared in the world of Magecraft? Was he truly as extraordinary as Seal claimed? Though Maram trusted Seal's judgment, for the sake of caution, He decided to test whether this man was truly qualified to become the White Princess's protector. While both the Black Princess and the White Princess were true ancestors, Maram Solomon's loyalty lay firmly with the White Princess. If the day ever came when the two were fated to clash, Maram would unhesitatingly side with the White Princess. As a true ancestor more loyal to Crimson Moon than anyone else, he had even steeled himself to kill one of Crimson Moon's heirs if it came to that. Toward the power-hungry schemers who targeted the princess for their petty ambitions. Who, even now, hid in the shadows, too cowardly to act openly. Maram felt nothing but boundless contempt. That man's name is Roy, isn't it? If so, he'd better not disappoint. After all, the real storm was only just beginning. If he was nothing more than an empty name, he wouldn't be able to protect the White Princess. In that case, Maram himself would eliminate him. With that thought, Maram's smile faded. He turned to Seal and began inquiring about the details with greater specificity. Little did he know that this forthcoming test would become one of the most unforgettable moments in his long existence as a dead apostle. Chapter 134, 134 Shiki Nanaya. Suddenly, I awoke from a dream. Above me was the pitch-black expanse of night, and within the empty house, there wasn't a soul to be found. I inhaled softly, catching the familiar scent of tatami mats and bedding around me. The canopy of the heavens was profound, the starlit sky adorned with celestial beauty, as if crafted by an artisan's hand. Yet, in the shadowed corner of this old, dimly lit room, a faint silhouette seemed to huddle. Death? No, it was something quieter. A profound stillness. In this silence, a boy who had appeared unnoticed in the room began to reminisce about the past. The night deepened. The indistinct figure of the boy stepped out through the garden gate. The house, silent and desolate, was devoid of life. Alone, he felt fear, isolated, he was consumed by unease. So, he wandered into the courtyard in search of others. Father, mother. He called out, but no response came. Under the pale moonlight, the cold in the courtyard stung his fingers. The frozen stars in the sky, the pitch-black night, and the icy glow of the moon surrounded him. The mansion's courtyard was vast, the darkness enveloping its surroundings. The blackness of the night, the empty courtyard, and the dense woods nearby all seemed like a stage shrouded by curtains. Rustling sounds. The curtains began to part. Screams. The performance commenced. Starlight scattered, mingling with the crimson that sprayed into the air, transforming into the theater's illumination. It was as though the red streams had become festive ribbons, celebrating the play unfolding before them. Cries of agony, endless and varied, the sight of vivid crimson filled his view. Under this tranquil night sky, there was no peace to be found. The curtains had yet to fully open. Unable to bear the abnormal cacophony, the boy dashed toward a certain direction. The night remained dark, neither the starlight nor the crimson could dispel it. Even the moon's cold light could not pierce the dense forest. He ran, and he ran. Far and long, passing by countless figures. He could no longer recall who he had brushed past. Fear in his heart? Perhaps. It propelled him forward into the darkness ahead. As he ran, he seemed to hear someone calling his name. Shiki. Ah, that's right. His name was Shiki. But his surname? He couldn't remember. So, he continued running, deeper into the shadows. When he finally broke through the forest, he saw everyone waiting for him in the clearing. Their appearances were strange, each of their bodies was incomplete, marred by gaping wounds. The clearing was drenched in a crimson liquid, thick and vivid like tomato sauce. The smell was pungent. This was no tomato sauce. He had smelled it before while slaughtering boars, though this scent was somehow different. His fingers grew colder, and his legs began to tremble uncontrollably. It was then that the sound of footsteps echoed across the clearing. From the opposite side, a figure approached. A stranger. Their eyes were awash with crimson, the red liquid seeping into their eyeballs. As his consciousness began to blur, the approaching figure seemed eerily familiar. Where had he seen them before? A stranger? No. It was Father. He was walking toward him. It seemed this time, it would be his turn to be torn apart. Fragments of hazy images and memories, ones that didn't seem to belong to him, flickered through the boy's mind, leaving him confused. He stretched his hand toward the full moon above. Why hadn't he noticed until now? The crimson hue tonight. How beautiful it was. Awakening from the dream, or perhaps returning from death. Shikitano's hair was damp with sweat, and bloodshot veins crept across his eyes, the aftermath of nightmares and restless struggle. Was that a dream? No, it wasn't a dream. It felt far too real. Unbearably real. That wasn't just a dream. The figure wandering amidst the bodies strewn across the blood-soaked clearing was his father, Makahisa Tano. Nanaya. Tano. Two entirely different sets of memories flooded his mind. One was the life of Shiki Nanaya, living in seclusion with his family deep in the mountains. The other, is Shiki Tano, the eldest son of the Tano family. These two distinct timelines corresponded to the first and latter halves of his life, and the sharp contrast between them was unbearable. Clutching his head, his eyes widened in pain. Anger, sorrow, despair. An endless stream of fragmented whispers spilled from his lips. It was already 10 in the morning. This was long past Shiki's usual time to head to school, but no one came to wake him. Seeing Shiki's pain thrashing on the bed, Roy could guess what he was going through and chose not to disturb him. Awake now, Shiki Tano? Roy sipped his coffee before rising, observing Shiki's disheveled appearance and bloodshot eyes. It's already 10? Shiki glanced at the clock in the hotel's living room, his voice hoarse and weak. After a night trapped in a loop of nightmares, his condition was dreadful. He looked like a sleep-deprived gamer on the verge of collapse. Yeah, it's 10. Here, drink this water first. Roy poured a glass of water and handed it to him, a small gesture of care. Ah. Thank you. Shiki accepted the glass and drained it in one go. The cool water soothed his parched throat, clearing his mind and bringing a semblance of clarity to his gaze. Want some breakfast? Akaya and Kohaku just went out to grab some. No. No, thank you. I'm not hungry. Shiki quickly declined Roy's offer. Even now, his mind was still trapped in the vivid recollection of that crimson-soaked clearing, the shattered corpses, and his slain family. The mere thought churned his stomach, obliterating any desire to eat. All right, but make sure you drink plenty of water. Take the day off. Go to school like this, and you'll just worry your classmates. Seeing Shiki's troubled state, Roy understood the cause. The restraints left in Shiki's mind by Makuhisa had been lifted, replaced by an illusion Roy had learned from Merlin. Like the visions a master sees of their servants past, this spell forced Shiki to relive memories he had deliberately forgotten. But those memories, they weren't kind to him. It must have been the horrific massacre of his family. What's wrong, Shiki? Nightmares? Roy asked, though he already knew the answer. Yes, a nightmare. A terrible, terrifying nightmare. Shiki nodded, his face pale and grim. Really? What's your take on it? My take? I don't know. Shiki's response was filled with uncertainty, his voice faltering. His gaze darted, unfocused, and his spirit seemed unmoored. Should I feel anger? Grief? Or just pain? I don't even know how to face Akaya anymore. Not surprising. Roy placed a comforting hand on Shiki's shoulder and said, with measured warmth, don't rush it, and don't force yourself to decide. Take your time. One day, you'll remember everything. You'll come to terms with it all, and then you can make your choice. Your story may not have started with happiness, but that doesn't define your entire life. Who you become is entirely up to you. Those simple words were like a key, unlocking a door in Shiki's heart. His dazed eyes sharpened as he slowly raised his head, meeting Roy's outstretched hand. The memories of his slaughtered parents, their bodies torn apart. The shame and anger of years spent obeying a false father. His sister Akaya. And everything he had endured until now swirled in his mind. But what am I supposed to do? In his confusion and pain, that outstretched hand was his lifeline. He grasped it tightly and cried out, please, tell me. No, that's an answer I can't give you. Faced with Shiki's desperate plea, Roy shook his head slightly. Now that you've remembered everything, the choice of what comes next is yours alone. Mine alone. About half an hour later, Tuko Ozaki and Shiki Ryougi returned to the base after finishing their breakfast outside. Tuko stretched lazily. After a quick tidy-up, she prepared to head back to her room for a well-deserved nap. Roy had informed them earlier that the Tano family would handle investigating the dead apostles' movements today. This meant they wouldn't need to scour the city's alleys. Or worse, its sewers. In search of those monsters as they usually did. She agreed with this plan. The dead apostles, driven underground by the local ley line overseers' efforts, were now as elusive as rats. It made sense to leave the search to the Tano family, who were far more familiar with Misaki Town. For now, only the most suitable individuals, Garrett Sugu and Alice's Song of Sixpence, remained on patrol in the city. The others took this rare opportunity to rest, avoiding any unnecessary disruptions that might alert their enemies. Here's your breakfast. Don't starve to death. The moment Shiki Ryougi stepped into the living room, she spotted Roy sipping coffee early in the morning. A trace of exasperation crossed her face. Drinking coffee on an empty stomach will upset your stomach, you know. I know. Though his body wouldn't suffer no matter how much coffee he drank, Roy nodded with a smile at her earnest expression. Accepting the sandwich Shiki had brought, he began eating with evident enthusiasm, much to her satisfaction. Slow down. Don't choke, idiot. Aren't you going to eat? Shiki Ryougi glanced at Shiki Tano, offering him an extra portion of breakfast she had brought along. And no, thank you. Shikitano hesitated, waving off the sandwich. The sight of the ketchup on it was enough to make his stomach turn. Afraid of sandwiches? What a strange guy. Noticing his awkward expression, Shiki didn't press further. She tucked the sandwich back into her pocket and continued watching Roy eat. By the way, where's Arcuade? Didn't she go out with you? Having finished his breakfast, Roy looked around, noting Arcuade's absence. She went shopping with Aoko. They'll probably be back soon. If Arcuade was with Aoko, there was no need to worry about her safety. Is this the new helper you found? After a brief conversation, Shiki turned her attention to Shikitano, who was sitting on the sofa. He seemed frail, his health apparently in poor condition. A stark contrast to her expectations. To her, he looked like nothing more than an ordinary high school student. But she didn't let appearances fool her. If Roy had brought him here, there had to be something exceptional about him, even if she couldn't see it yet. Feeling uneasy under her persistent gaze, Shikitano scratched his cheek awkwardly and asked cautiously, "Is there something on my face?" "No, Shiki just finds you interesting." "Shiki? Interesting?" "Yeah." Roy interjected with a nod. "Shiki enjoys fighting, so naturally, she's curious about the traits you possess." "You mean my eyes?" Shikitano touched his eyes reflexively. "Exactly. Shiki also has eyes just like yours. Their name is the mystic eyes of death perception." The words hung in the air, evoking different reactions from the two. Shikitano was startled, while Shiki expression lit up with excitement. Someone else with eyes like hers? Their gazes locked, each examining the other with newfound intrigue. Before either could speak, Roy, smiling warmly, proposed, "It's rare for two wielders of the mystic eyes of death perception to meet. Since we have free time today, why don't you have a sparring match?" "A sparring match?" Hearing Roy's suggestion, both of them froze momentarily. Shikitano, Shiki here also comes from one of the 4 great demon hunter families. Her name is Shiki, while you are the last surviving heir of the Nanaya family. Both of you have foundational skills, so why not have a sparring match? It's a good opportunity for you to familiarize yourself with the power you possess, just in case you ever need it. Familiarize with my power. For future necessity. Shikitano, who had initially been prepared to decline, withdrew his words. He nodded slightly, agreeing to Roy's arrangement. Indeed, he needed strength. He couldn't afford to wander aimlessly anymore. The memories he had recovered weren't just of his childhood in the Nanaya family. They also included his time with the Tano family, the period when he was adopted, and his memories were sealed by Makuhisa Tano. Should he seek revenge? He wasn't sure. Makuhisa Tano had killed his parents and family, and Shiki's fury toward him was immeasurable. He would gladly cut him into pieces if he were alive. But Makuhisa was already dead. Who would he take revenge on now? The Tano family? Akaya? His younger sister, who had truly seen him as her older brother? Or the other members of the Tano household? He didn't know. But he didn't want to stand against Akaya, nor could he bring himself to harm her. His confusion and pain churned within him, unresolved and overwhelming. Perhaps this battle could serve as an outlet. Through the swing of his blade and the cries of his heart, he might find a temporary reprieve. Shiki, sensing the turbulent emotions and the strange aura emanating from him, looked slightly surprised. The frail and unremarkable impression he had initially given off had vanished, replaced by an air of sorrow and lethality, akin to that of a professional assassin. It was exhilarating. She glanced at Roy, who responded with a simple nod. With that reassurance, she cast aside any reservations and prepared herself to fight this boy, who also possessed the mystic eyes of death perception. Seeing that neither of them objected, Roy transported them to a more open area where they could fight freely. Before long, the two stood at opposite ends of the field, ready for the duel. They stared each other down for several minutes. Shiki quickly noticed something about Shikitano. While he appeared focused, his conflicted gaze betrayed him. It wasn't the look of someone eager to fight or kill. It was more like the calm before a release, as though he sought to vent his suppressed emotions through this battle. She understood. She had done the same in the past. Fighting to cause puppets or practicing with her blade whenever frustrations or dangerous impulses overcame her. But this wasn't how one should approach a real fight. This was indulgence, not combat. If that's your mindset, then you're underestimating me. Fighting isn't child's play. If you lose, it could cost you your life. Let me teach you a lesson. With her decision made, Shiki sprang into action. Since this was a sparring match, not a life or death duel, she refrained from using her mystic eyes of death perception. Instead, she relied on the techniques she had honed through rigorous training. Standing firm, she raised her katana horizontally across her chest. Her stance, steeped in the traditions of the Ryugi family's swordsmanship, was poised and elegant. On the opposite side, Shikitano also refrained from activating his mystic eyes. Instead, he assumed the standard combat stance of the Nanaya family. He crouched slightly, his posture mimicking a hawk ready to strike. Once both were prepared, Roy raised his hand and announced the start of the match. The moment his words fell, the two figures, one lithe and graceful, the other sharp and predatory, lunged at each other with astonishing speed. Clang! The sharp clash of blades rang out as steel met steel. Chapter 135, 135 You Can't Hide From Me. Time moved swiftly. Or perhaps, it was more accurate to say that Roy's actions were swift. By the next day, after Shikitano briefly informed his family of his safety, Akaya finally exhaled a sigh of relief. But her concern for her brother's safety spurred her into immediate action. That very evening, she mobilized the vast network of the Tano family to conduct a thorough investigation throughout the entirety of Misaki Town. Coupled with the intelligence provided by Alice Kuonji, Roy now had a comprehensive understanding of the dead apostles' hiding places. Having left Shiki and Oko Ozaki to handle matters for so long, it felt inappropriate for him to continue shirking his duties. Well then, Roy muttered to himself, it's about time I made a move. High atop a 20-story building, Roy stood with arms outstretched, laughing freely into the fierce wind. His eyes, now a piercing azure, signaled his readiness for battle. While he seemed brimming with enthusiasm, the others who had accompanied him displayed mixed reactions. Arcuead eagerly raised her hands in support, exclaiming, so cool. It's like the Roy who took down an RVNQSR is back. Shiki Ryougi, on the other hand, looked at him with mild exasperation. What is this? Are you having another middle school syndrome episode? Oko chuckled softly, her confidence in Roy unwavering. Isn't his entertaining? I'm actually looking forward to what Roy will do. Meanwhile, Toko remained expressionless, her thoughts far from the spectacle. Honestly, I don't care what happens, as long as I don't have to work overtime again. This week's workload has been killing me. Lord Roy. Akaya's voice came through over the phone. I've already sent you the list and locations of suspected dead apostles. Did you receive it? Got it. He glanced at the map Akaya had sent. The red circles marked potential hiding spots for the dead apostles, and they overlapped by roughly 80% with the key areas identified by Kuonji's intelligence. Impressive. Achieving this level of precision in just one day? Roy couldn't help but feel a newfound respect for the Tano family's efficiency. Do you need any assistance from us? While we obviously can't handle the 27 dead apostle ancestors, we're more than capable of dealing with the dead apostles. No need. Just keep tracking their locations and handle the aftermath. I'll take care of everything else. Roy interrupted. Understood. That makes things easier for us. The call ended with a soft beep. Roy lowered his phone, announcing the end of the conversation and the beginning of his performance. Before taking action, he glanced back at the group waiting for him. With a sly smile, he slid a finger across his temple, activating his circuits. Then, with a sharp whoosh, the rooftop was left with only the faint trace of his silhouette and the shattered remnants of the cement beneath his feet. Enveloped in a radiant aura of magical energy, Roy shot into the sky like a comet, moving at superhuman speed across the cityscape. That day, every dead apostle lurking in Misaki Town experienced a profound sense of terror. As his figure disappeared into the horizon, Shiki Ryougi massaged her temples with 2 fingers, her tone tinged with disbelief as she asked Toko, did he just take off? And break the sound barrier in the process? Probably. Toko replied after a brief pause. Though her heart wasn't exactly calm, she had seen enough to maintain her composure better than Shiki. She glanced in the direction Roy had gone, then at Toko, shaking her head in mild irritation. Seriously, these magicians are all freaks. While the others were still marveling at Roy's sudden ascent, Arcuead had already decided to join the chase in her own way. Using the power of her reality marble, she manifested wings like those of a bird, taking to the sky as she called out, wait for me, Roy. You're not doing something this fun without me. Oko and Shiki exchanged glances as Arcuead flew off. Oko shrugged lightly. Don't look at me, there's no way I can keep up with them. Though she could enhance her speed with magical energy, achieving vertical takeoff like that was entirely out of her league. In a corner of Misaki Town, high above the city, a blinding streak of white light flashed across the sky. The pressure from its passage caused flags to ripple violently and signboards to sway precariously. In the distance, something, or someone, was rapidly approaching. With a thunderous bang, Roy executed a forceful landing, using gravity to amplify his momentum as he kicked open the door of a single apartment. FBI, open up. We gonna checking the water meters. Sensing the presence of a dead apostle below, Roy wasted no time. He was here to purge these creatures, and hesitation wasn't on the agenda. The door splintered open, revealing the scene within. In the spacious entryway, a man who had transformed into a dead apostle knelt over a woman, his fangs buried in her neck. Roy's gaze swept over them with cold detachment. The woman's pallor was ghastly, her limbs stiff and lifeless. A single glance was enough to confirm that she was already dead. The dead apostle, startled by Roy's sudden intrusion, recoiled in terror. But Roy was unmoved. He strode into the entryway with steady steps, his demeanor calm, though a flicker of pity glimmered in his eyes. Looking at the wretched man before him, once human, now reduced to a bloodthirsty monster, Roy felt a twinge of sorrow. When this man regained his humanity, if only briefly, and saw his wife's lifeless body at his feet, the despair would surely be unbearable. Roy mourned the cruel fate that awaited him. The man bore no fault, his slain family was equally innocent. The true villain was the one who had turned him into this abomination. Roa. Your sins are unforgivable. Roy's resentment for the elusive mastermind grew deeper. However, the man's fear quickly gave way to primal instincts. The presence of such a potent source of magic awakened a ravenous hunger within him. His twisted form licked the blood from his lips with an unnaturally long tongue, and his hollow eyes burned with animalistic desire. Then he lunged, moving at an inhuman speed toward Roy, intent on sinking his fangs into fresh prey. But all he met was Roy's impassive gaze. Rest in peace. With a flick of his sleeve, several enchanted black keys shot forth, piercing the dead apostle's skull and limbs. The man's body convulsed violently as flames engulfed him, his very soul sizzling away in white smoke. Before he could comprehend what had happened, his body was pinned to the wall, purified by the holy properties of the blades. This was the first one. Roy cast a dispassionate glance at the pile of ashes that had once been the man's body. Without joy or sorrow, he turned and headed for his next target. As he left, he didn't neglect to conjure flames, setting the lifeless woman's body alight to prevent her from being reanimated as a dead apostle. There was no time to mourn the dead. The priority was to eliminate every last one of these dead apostles, halting their unchecked infection. Only then could he confront the true perpetrator and bring this nightmare to an end. After a brief moment of reflection, a burst of white flame erupted from the apartment balcony. Roy ascended into the sky, racing toward the next marked location. Shortly after his departure, reinforcements from the Tano family and the church arrived at the scene, thoroughly disposing of any remaining traces of the dead apostle and his victim. The ninth one. With practiced efficiency, Roy pinned the approaching dead apostle to the ground and obliterated it with a blast of magical energy. Glancing at his phone, he read the message from Akaya. This is the last location. He had scoured all the spots provided by Akaya and Alice. Of the 12 locations listed, 2 were decoys, and by the time he reached another, it was deserted, leaving no trace of the target. The remaining 9 dead apostles had been vanquished within 2 hours. This gave him a moment of respite. In that short span of time, Roy had traversed the entirety of Misaki Town, eliminating most of the rogue dead apostles. He didn't even count the newly turned low-level vampires and ghouls. His efficiency was so staggering it would put seasoned executors of the church to shame. Thousands of magical circuits coursed through his body, generating an aura of devastating magical flames. Enhanced to an almost supernatural degree, his body became a force of nature, allowing him to streak across the skies of Misaki Town like a comet, hunting his prey with relentless precision. For any dead apostle he located, death was inevitable. Now seated on the sofa of a small Western-style mansion, whose former owner he had just purified, Roy used his phone to report his progress and share the peculiar pattern he had uncovered. After 2 hours of relentless pursuit, he noticed that the dead apostles he had eliminated were not chosen at random. Each one had held a notable position in society, spanning various key sectors of Misaki Town's infrastructure. Economy, judiciary, transportation, healthcare. For instance, the manager of a transportation company, a prominent bank director, even members of the police force. A full-spectrum service of societal roles. The mastermind's intentions were becoming clear. By turning influential figures in the city into his thralls and controlling them, he sought to dominate Misaki Town more effectively. Such a calculated plan aligned perfectly with what Arcuaid had described as Roa's modus operandi. Roa favored selecting hosts with exceptional capabilities from powerful local families, leveraging their influence to expand his control and establish dominion over key regions. The emergence of these dead apostles strongly indicated that Roa had already begun manipulating Misaki Town from the shadows. Still, his audacity was astonishing. To make his move in a city governed by the Tano family, the magician of the fifth magic, and the pure witch? If Aoko were to learn of Roa's true intentions, she would undoubtedly be furious. This wasn't mere provocation. It was a blatant slap to the face of the Ozaki family. Knowing this, Roy had thoughtfully shared his findings with everyone involved. Sure enough, on the other side of the city, Aoko's fury erupted when she read Roy's message, while Tuko laughed uncontrollably, clearly amused. Tuko almost seemed to relish the idea of someone wresting control of Misaki Town from her foolish sister. However, Roy also sensed something unusual during this mission. Roa was a cunning elder vampire who had survived countless ages. His intellect was not to be underestimated. Why, then, was he recklessly expanding his network of thralls so openly? Had he not realized that the city's leyline administrator, the magician of the fifth magic, Oko Ozaki, had returned? Or was he unafraid of attracting Arcuaid's wrath? Even as one of the dead apostle ancestors, Roa could not dismiss the threat posed by a magician of Oko's caliber. The title of Magician of the Fifth Magic carried immense weight across the magical community worldwide. If it were just Arcuaid, Roa's actions might have been explained as taking advantage of her weakened state. But that wasn't the case. The death of NRVNQSR Chaos should have served as a stark warning to Roa, proving that even a gravely injured Arcuaid, alongside her allies, still possessed the strength to annihilate one of the 27 dead apostle ancestors. And yet, Roa persisted. Roy considered two possibilities. First, Roa might have developed a means of countering Arcuaid, emboldening him to act so brazenly. Second, he might have allied with someone new and was setting a trap to lure his enemies into a decisive ambush. Roy deemed the latter more likely. From Arcuaid's descriptions, he had gained a deep understanding of Roa's insidious nature. If the first scenario were true, it would be manageable. But if the second were correct, things could become far more complicated. Unfortunately, despite his deductions, Roy still couldn't pinpoint Roa's whereabouts, even knowing he was currently using Shikitano as his host. Neither Song of Sixpence nor the detection magecraft Roy crafted from Shiki's residual traces had yielded any results. If only Merlin were here. Roy mused, feeling a pang of frustration toward his old friend and occasional tool. Of all the times to disappear, why now? But self-pity would get him nowhere. He had another visitor to attend to. And it seemed this one wouldn't be easy to deal with. You've hidden for so long, and yet you still refuse to show yourself? Whoosh! Roy's sharp gaze flicked toward a shadowy corner. With a sudden flick of his wrist, several enchanted black keys sliced through the air, hurtling toward their target with unerring precision. The sound of blades cutting through the darkness startled the hidden figure, who barely managed to deflect the attack with a sweeping motion of their long sleeve. Clang! To Roy's surprise, the black keys failed to pierce the fabric, rebounding instead. So, you can block them? Roy muttered, his expression unchanging. It seems I've caught a big fish. Was it one of the dead apostle ancestors? No, not yet certain. But now that they had shown themselves, there would be no escape. In an instant, Roy vanished, the initial black key attack revealed to be a feint. His true strike came in the form of a devastating punch, obliterating both the shadowy figure and half the wall behind them. Amid the debris and pressure of the blast, the figure that emerged was Maram Solomon. You've got to be kidding me. How did he find me? Caught off guard by Roy's precise attack, Maram was momentarily stunned. He had prepared thoroughly, using mystic codes to suppress his presence, yet Roy had still uncovered him. How absurd is this guy's perception? But there was no time for Maram to process his shock. The next wave of attacks was already underway. Crack! Roy's hand ignited with black flames, their ominous glow flashing through the air. In a heartbeat, he harnessed the near-limitless magical energy within his body, channeling it into a roaring inferno that burned deep within his soul. Raising a finger, he condensed the magic into a dark crimson sphere, its energy surging with terrifying intensity as it grew larger. With a simple flick, Roy unleashed the massive blast. Mana discharge, half power. The crimson torrent engulfed Maram Solomon, consuming him in a devastating maelstrom of magical destruction. Chapter 136, 136 Ally. As the crimson orb of magical energy flickered at the tip of Roy's finger, it unleashed an overwhelming storm of red energy, compressed to an unimaginable degree, cascading between him and Maram. The devastating crimson tempest roared with immense magical energy, making Maram's eyes widen in shock. What the hell? There was no mistaking it. This man intended to kill him outright, with no hesitation or even a hint of probing. It was clear Roy had mistaken him for Roa or one of his accomplices. I'm done for. This is a disaster. Seeing the relentless magical storm advancing toward him, Maram finally realized that he had severely underestimated Roy's power. He was in serious trouble. From the terrifying precision of Roy's senses to the sheer volume of magical energy he could unleash at will, it was clear, no further testing was needed. This wasn't an opponent he could hope to defeat. Maram remembered Seal's words before he came here. The pressure I felt from that man was no less than what Narberg, that lunatic. Perhaps even greater. At the time, Maram had thought Seal was exaggerating. Even if Roy was on the same level as that lunatic, it wouldn't matter. Maram wasn't confident about beating the lunatic, but he could always escape. That confidence led him here, lying in wait to test the protector of the White Princess of the true ancestors. If Roy turned out to be a hollow reputation, killing him could be passed off as an accident during his hunt for Roy's subordinates. On the other hand, if Roy truly was strong, Miriam could simply withdraw and avoid any further confrontation. But now, a third possibility had reared its head. This guy isn't just strong. He's overwhelmingly, incomprehensibly stronger than me. And now, I can't run. He finally understood the meaning behind Seal's pitiful gaze when she warned him. If you're losing badly and he's about to kill you, try mentioning my name and begging for mercy. Maybe he'll let you live. Yet here, there wasn't even time to explain himself. Miriam wasn't a dead apostle with a reinforced body, nor did he have NRV and QSR Chaos's absurd regenerative abilities. If he took that blast head-on, he would be utterly annihilated. Facing the impending red tempest, Miriam steeled himself despite the panic in his heart. Come on. Don't let me down now, Lady Wind-Up. Refusing to take the attack directly, Miriam's right hand flared with magical energy. Pouring everything he had into it, he invoked his trump card. With a thunderous crack, a towering white figure over 10 meters tall materialized before him. Lady Wind-Up. Also known as the Demon of the Right Arm, sealed within Miriam's right arm and his most prized war machine. An exceptional demon capable of self-evolving intelligence, Lady Wind-Up could adapt its state to gain the upper hand in any battle. But now, after only a brief skirmish, Miriam had been forced to summon his most powerful weapon. Block the attack and retreat immediately. Do not engage further. From behind, Miriam barked out a series of orders to Lady Wind-Up. Acknowledged. The demon nodded slightly, placing Miriam in its abdominal compartment before straightening its massive form. Without hesitation, it braced itself against the oncoming crimson torrent of magical energy. Whum! The red magical energy current slammed into Lady Wind-Up's metal frame, causing the enormous construct to stagger under the impact. Its colossal body buckled to one knee, sections of its structure beginning to disintegrate under the relentless force. A giant mecha girl? Seeing Lady Wind-Up, Roy paused in rare surprise, momentarily easing his magical output. A dead apostle has something like this? I want one too. His momentary distraction was all Lady Wind-Up needed. Detecting the reduced magical flow, it acted immediately on Miriam's command, ramping up its energy output and retreating swiftly without a second thought. Trying to flee? Roy narrowed his eyes. I promised Shiki and the others I'd bring back a big catch. And I'm not letting this giant mecha girl get away. Determined, Roy flared his magical flames and accelerated through the air, relentlessly pursuing the retreating Lady Wind-Up. In the outskirts of Misaki Town, an unusual chase unfolded, a towering white mecha sprinting frantically ahead while a streak of white flames glided in low pursuit. The surreal scene left the Tano family cleanup crew rubbing their eyes in disbelief. Am I dreaming? Did I just see a giant robot from a tokusatsu show? Even Arcuaid, who had just arrived on the scene, was stunned. Is that Lady Wind-Up? Tilting her head in confusion, she couldn't fathom why Miriam's most treasured weapon was here. And why it was fighting Roy. As a follower of the White Princess, Miriam's loyalty lay with her. While Arcuaid had never personally seen Lady Wind-Up in action, she'd heard Miriam talk about it before. That familiarity allowed her to recognize it immediately. But now wasn't the time to stand idle. If she didn't intervene, Miriam was going to die. Gathering her magical energy, Arcuaid signaled her arrival as forcefully as she could. This presence. So familiar. Roy detected the signal, his azure mystic eyes spinning rapidly as he spotted Arcuaid rushing toward them from the distance. Did she come here to support me? Worried I couldn't handle it. Not necessary. This small fry isn't much of a challenge. Meanwhile, Miriam, sensing Arcuaid's presence, felt a wave of relief. The princess's presence. It's the princess. Save me, your highness. Desperately, he directed Lady Wind-Up toward Arcuaid. Yes, this way, Miriam. I'll stop Roy. Understanding his intent, Arcuaid felt her own tension ease and quickened her pace. But to Roy, this change in direction looked entirely different. He's turning around? Don't tell me. He's going after Arcuaid now? The audacity. Dead apostle, you must think I'm irrelevant. Do you really think I'd let you have your way? Taking advantage of the brief moment when Miriam shifted direction, Roy decisively tore off the restrictive pendant around his neck, unleashing an even more torrential wave of magical energy. In an instant, the force of his aura surged dramatically, the white flames enveloping his body glowing fiercer than before, now laced with crackling streaks of black lightning. What the hell? Was he holding back all this time? Feeling the overwhelming aura emanating from Roy, Miriam's panic deepened. He pushed Lady Wind-Up to accelerate faster, his gaze locked on Arcuaid, who was steadily closing in from the distance. There was still hope. A sliver of salvation. If he could just reach her. If he could just make it to that point, there might still be a chance. But it was too late. In just a few breaths, Roy's figure, a streak of brilliance in the air, landed heavily on the head of Lady Windup. The impact was devastating. Carrying both an immense magical charge and sheer physical force, Roy's strike drove the colossal frame of Lady Windup to its knees, sinking it halfway into the earth. "Master, the enemy is on my head." Inside the cockpit, Miram turned pale. He caught up so easily? If that's how it is, there's no choice. He would have to deploy the king of the land and summon his other demons to escape. But before he could act, Roy above him was already forming hand seals, channeling his most familiar incantation. And then, high-speed divine words. "Rise, green star, silver desert, under the black Sunday Mercury, gold, philosopher's stone, pillar of heaven. Unite the 4 points, and the miracle that descends will be your domain." Heaven him. The intricate chant flowed effortlessly from Roy's lips. Immediately, waves of mysterious magical energy rippled outwards. The ground beneath Lady Windup dissolved into endless white sand, stretching into infinity. In the blink of an eye, the scenery shifted. The land around them vanished, and Miram realized with a sinking feeling that he and Lady Windup had been dragged into a new world. A world entirely under Roy's control. In this pale, desolate realm, Roy reigned as its absolute master, commanding the resources of this constructed reality to annihilate his foes. This is a reality marble. As a well-versed Magus, Miram instantly recognized the phenomenon. A magical miracle heralded as the pinnacle of magecraft, one that bordered on the realm of true magic. The key to a reality marble lay in one's origin. Only Magus deeply attuned to their origin could hope to manifest such a feat. By materializing the landscape of one's mind, it granted unparalleled influence over the physical world. This infinite magical energy, coupled with Roy's absurd magical output, his heightened perception, and now this reality marble. 6 stats at rank A. How is anyone supposed to fight this? You've won, kid. Spare me. Fine. Before Miram could react further, Roy activated his reality marble. Chains forged from pure magical energy surged forth from the vast, pale void. Like serpents, they coiled around Lady Windup's massive frame, binding its limbs and dragging half its body deep into the sands. "I can't move. Master Miram, I cannot execute your command. Firepower insufficient. Please provide alternative orders." Lady Windup, battered and on the verge of collapse, reported in a faintly mechanical tone. Struggling to tear apart the relentless chains, it found its arms immobilized, its strength entirely neutralized. Caught in a futile loop, it could do nothing but repeat Miram's last command. "I'm sorry, Lady Windup. Just hold on a little longer. There's no need to fight anymore." Miram's voice carried a note of exhaustion. He made no attempt to resist. At this point, there was no point in even pretending to fight back. Rather than calling it a battle, it had been one-sided torment from the very beginning. Even if he unleashed the king of the land or summoned the rest of his demons, what difference would it make? He doubted that someone capable of obliterating Lady Windup in mere moments could be overcome by mere numbers. Especially not within the constructed mindscape of his opponent's reality marble. Struggling further would only make him look pathetic. Resigned, Miram decisively detached himself from Lady Windup and stepped directly into the heart of the reality marble. Then, he tore off a piece of his white clerical robe, fashioned it into a makeshift white flag, and waved it vigorously in the air. Using reinforcement magecraft to amplify his voice, he raised his hand and shouted with all the strength he could muster. "Stop attacking. I'm a friendly. I'm Miram Solomon, an agent of the Holy Church's burial agency. I'm a colleague of Seal and a devoted follower of White Princess Arcuaid Brunistute. We're all here to deal with Roa, so please, spare me." "Huh?" From his vantage point on the elevated platform, Roy's expression twisted into a mixture of confusion and disbelief as he watched Miram execute what could only be described as the iconic gesture of surrender. Still, the mention of Seal and Arcuaid gave him pause. The colossal angel looming in the skies above the white desert halted its earth-splitting downward slash just in time. Though the massive sword hadn't struck, the overwhelming pressure from the impending blow alone pinned Miram in place atop Lady Windup. He couldn't take a single step, let alone mount any defense. After all, who in their right mind could stand against a 20-meter-long greatsword with nothing but their bare body? The angel folded its luminous wings and descended directly toward Miram, its immense sword still gripped tightly in hand. The impact of the landing was deafening, reverberating through the air with a force that knocked dust and debris into Miram's face. In any other circumstance, his sharp tongue would have delivered a sarcastic remark in return. But when he looked up and saw the towering figure, a radiant giant many times larger than Lady Windup, he immediately swallowed his words. Miram lowered his head in quiet submission. One glance was all it took to confirm, This was an enemy he couldn't possibly defeat. Better not to provoke them. As the dust began to settle, Roy's figure emerged from the haze, standing not far from where Miriam knelt. Chapter 137, 137 Dead Apostle Ancestors. In a crumbling, desolate building, a man with white hair, clad in a black trench coat, slowly opened his eyes. He gazed at the figure emerging from the darkness, his eyes filled with pure, unbridled killing intent. "I never thought you'd dare to show yourself before me again." "Roa." "Of course. How else could I demonstrate my sincerity if I didn't come personally, Vlav?" Facing the overwhelming malice emanating from the man before him, Roa merely smiled faintly, unfazed by the hostility. "Though I fully understand your hatred for me, I must ask you to restrain yourself. After all, even if you kill me, it won't lift the curse that torments you, will it? How dare you threaten me? Don't forget who's responsible for my current plight." At those words, Vlav Archangel could no longer suppress his rage. With a roar, he swung his massive white sword mercilessly toward Roa's head. But Roa was no passive victim. Raising his palm, he conjured two blood-red spears, crossing them to block the sword's descent. As their weapons clashed, their eyes locked in a tense standoff. "Calm yourself, Vlav. Don't you want to break the curse? Killing me might delay your suffering, but for me, death is a mere inconvenience. I'll just revive eventually. But you? If you fall, Arcuaid will return to the Millennium Castle to slumber, and you'll lose your last chance. Tell me, in your current maddened state, how long can you endure? Decades? Or just a few more years? Damn you." Roa's words cut deep, like blades piercing Vlav's wounded pride. "You despicable worm." Vlav cursed, withdrawing his sword only to deliver a powerful kick to Roa's chest. Roa didn't dodge. The blow landed squarely, sending him staggering. But for a dead apostle ancestor, such an injury was trivial. If taking a few hits would calm his prospective ally, Roa considered it a small price to pay. Seeing Vlav halt his assault, Roa smiled. "That's more like it. We may have some unpleasant history between us, but at this point, cooperation is the only path to mutual benefit. After all, there's no real conflict of interest between us. Your ally, NRVNQSR Chaos, is gone. Without him, you can't kill Arcuaid or take her heart. So even if you're bent on killing me, it would be wiser to do so after lifting your curse, wouldn't it?" Roa's reasoning was insidious yet sound, forcing Vlav to suppress his mounting fury and resist the urge to tear Roa apart. The venomous snake had a point. NRVNQSR Chaos's rash, premature actions had led to his defeat at the hands of the princess, leaving Vlav's side critically underpowered for the hunt. While Vlav believed himself superior in raw strength and destructive capability, the princess was far from alone. The presence of Miriam Solomon, the church-aligned traitor, further tipped the scales. A confrontation with Arcuaid and Miriam would carry unacceptable risks. He might meet the same fate as an RVNQSR. The curse's torment was relentless, and time was no longer on his side. Finally, Vlav demanded, "How do you propose we cooperate? And what's in it for you?" "Relax, Vlav. I have no interest in Arcuaid's heart. My sights are set on the body of the Magus accompanying her. He is my ideal vessel for reincarnation." "A mere Magus?" "Yes, that's all I need." "Who is he? A lord? How strong is he?" Vlav was skeptical. "His identity is unclear. Perhaps he is affiliated with the clock tower or a notable lineage, but he's no lord. However, his body aligns perfectly with my needs. Far more suitable than my current vessel. As for his strength, he collaborated with Arcuaid and the magician of the fifth magic to slay NRVNQSR Chaos. Well? Does this arrangement suit you? You claim Arcuaid's heart, while I take the Magus's body. Our goals don't conflict in the slightest." Vlav fell silent, then nodded. If Roa's objective was merely the body of a Magus, it posed no significant obstacle, even if the target hailed from a prominent lineage. As for the Magus's role in NRVNQSR's death, Vlav dismissed it as auxiliary at best. The princess had likely carried the brunt of the battle. "Fine. How do we proceed?" "It's simple. You'll engage Arcuaid and the Magus head-on, exhausting or eliminating them. Meanwhile, I'll deal with Miriam Solomon and the other executors, ensuring they don't interfere. How does that sound?" "Reasonable. You handle Miriam and the executors, while I take on the princess." Though the division of labor seemed equitable, one issue remained unresolved. What about the magician of the fifth magic? Who will keep her occupied? "Don't worry. I have a solution." Anticipating the question, Roa reached into his pocket and revealed a crimson seed. "What's that?" Vlav's pupils constricted as recognition dawned. "How do you have that?" "It's a gift from Orton Ross. He desires Arcuaid's death as much as we do but cannot act directly. To aid us, he provided this." Roa explained with a smile, Plant this on the ley line managed by the Ozaki family, and the magician of the fifth magic will have no choice but to act. She'll be too preoccupied to intervene. And that's not all. Ross has also provided elite forces to ensure our success. With their aid, even the church will struggle to keep up. As Roy spoke, a cacophony of footsteps echoed. Dozens, then hundreds, of crimson eyes illuminated the darkness behind him. White Wing Lord's finest. Ross has spared no expense to solidify his claim as the king of the dead apostles. With this force, the church will be overwhelmed, and they'll even support you in your battle. So? Shall we cooperate? Vlav weighed his options. This was his last chance to break the curse. He couldn't afford to let it slip away. That's enough. We can cooperate. How decisive. Seeing Vlav agree, Roa happily placed a hand on his shoulder. Then here's to a pleasant partnership, Vlav. So, what do you say? Shall we shake hands first? Maybe grab a meal afterward? Get lost. Take your hand off me. If you do that again, I'll cut you into pieces. Come on, show a little enthusiasm. Whoosh. 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 Wait. Don't suddenly set me on fire. Put that cursed flame of yours away. Later that day, an abandoned building in Misaki Town experienced a sudden gas explosion. Chapter 138, 138 Friends Friendly? With his reality marble dispelled, Roy scrutinized the disheveled Miriam with a piercing gaze. Yes, a friendly. I'm a friendly. Miriam quickly replied, sensing Roy had truly ceased his attack. My name is Miriam Solomon. I'm a member of the burial agency under the Holy Church, a colleague of Seal, and a devoted supporter of Princess Arcuaid. We're on the same side. Miriam Solomon? The peculiar name caught Roy off guard. Moreover, the 10 golden rings on Miriam's fingers bore an uncanny resemblance to Solomon's legendary image. Yet, his frail physique suggested he wasn't suited for close combat. The fabled 10 rings weren't mere ornaments. They were divine constructs capable of summoning demon pillars from afar and serving as brass knuckles in melee. This imitation fell embarrassingly short of the original's grandeur. Under Roy's sharp scrutiny, Miriam felt uneasy but wisely chose to remain silent. Victory belongs to the stronger. Having just been kicked around like a ball, his survival owed entirely to his connections with the princess and Seal. He had no room for complaints. Roy, after a brief evaluation, cast a spell to restrict Miriam's movements, ensuring he wouldn't pull any tricks. Moments later, Arcuaid arrived. Roy. Miriam. You're finally out. How are you? Roy, are you hurt? Seeing Roy calm and unscathed, not even his clothes ruffled, and comparing him to the battered Miriam Solomon beside him, Arcuaid immediately understood how the fight had played out. As expected, Miriam had been thoroughly trounced by Roy. And judging by his condition, he had been beaten quite badly. Fortunately, Miriam was a dead apostle ancestor. His regenerative abilities were exceptional. As long as he was breathing, he'd recover before long. As long as Roy wasn't harmed, that was all that mattered. When Arcuaid finally made her way to them, Miriam's dejected expression softened into a smile. Princess, we meet again. Yes, it has been a while since we last met. I believe it was back in Millennium Castle? Arcuaid nodded slightly. Indeed, it's been quite some time. So when I heard you'd left Millennium Castle again, I rushed over from Europe without delay. But... Miriam glanced at Roy and shook his head with a bitter smile. It seems you now have someone far stronger than me by your side. With him protecting you, not even Ross himself could harm you. He, of course. Roy is incredible. Arcuaid, delighted by the praise, eagerly added, not only did Roy help me heal the injuries from the mystic eyes of death perception, but he also took care of that troublesome beast for me. So, NRVNQSR Chaos had indeed been slain? The news surprised Miriam, though he wasn't entirely shocked. Having experienced Roy's prowess firsthand, he had already formed an impression of his capabilities. Defeating NRVNQSR Chaos, that detestable creature, was well within the realm of possibility for someone like him. Miriam turned to Arcuaid. And? Princess, how have you been? How have I been? Arcuaid pondered for a moment before smiling warmly. I've been very happy. I've made plenty of new friends outside. They're all kind people, just like Roy. And what about you, Miriam? How are you doing? Still working for the Holy Church? Seeing Arcuaid's genuine smile, Miriam was momentarily stunned, then smiled faintly himself. She truly seemed happy. That's all that mattered. Yes, I'm still with the church. It's one of the few places I can call home. Miriam, why did you and Roy end up fighting this time? Arcuaid tilted her head curiously, diving straight into the heart of the matter. Roy turned his gaze toward him as well. He, too, was curious about why Miriam had been lurking in the apartment building infested with dead apostles, seemingly lying in wait for him. Naturally, he assumed Miriam to be one of Roa's accomplices, setting a trap. He even suspected Roa might be hiding nearby. Thus, he attacked decisively, every strike aimed to kill, hoping to draw Roa out and eliminate him on the spot. But as it turned out, the so-called dead apostle was an ally. And apparently, a friend of Arcuades. The situation had become awkward. Fortunately, Miriam recognized his own fault in the misunderstanding. His attempt to probe Roy had backfired spectacularly, leaving him beaten half to death. He couldn't blame anyone but himself. Who would have thought a Magus could fight like this? His perceptiveness, magical power, and speed were unparalleled. On top of that, he had mastered a reality marble. Since when did such a monster appear in the world of magecraft? Miriam sighed deeply and finally spoke. My apologies, Princess Arcuade, and to you as well, Lord Roy. It was entirely my decision this time. After hearing from Seal that you, Lord Roy, might have killed NRV and QSR Chaos and are serving as the princess's guardian, I couldn't help but grow curious. So, I decided to test your strength and verify the rumors. I set an ambush near Dead Apostle's hideout where you were expected to appear. And, well, the rest of the story is me being thoroughly thrashed, dragged into a reality marble without the slightest chance to fight back, and only spared thanks to Seal and the princess's intercession. It was utterly humiliating. Arcuade's expression shifted, her face tinged with a mix of sympathy and amusement. Clearly, she had a good sense of what Miriam had endured. Wasn't NRV and QSR Chaos's experience strikingly similar? Roy, however, remained composed. With a faint smirk, he addressed the dejected Miriam. So, did my strength meet your expectations, Miriam? Ah. Please don't tease me, my lord. Your power is immeasurable. Even if I join forces with Seal, there's no way we could stand against you. Hearing this, Miriam let out a bitter chuckle, readily admitting defeat. Though he bore the pride innate to those blessed by Crimson Moon, he wasn't so blinded by arrogance that he couldn't recognize the insurmountable gap between them. Miriam, was testing my abilities really your only objective? I understand your concern for Arcuade's safety, but traveling all the way from the Holy Church to Japan, you must have come with more pressing information. Would you care to share it with me? Consider it the price for your rather impolite experiment. Though Roy's tone was calm, it carried an undeniable authority. Despite calling it a test, deliberately lying in wait in a potential hotspot and employing specialized mystic codes to mask his presence was far from respectful. Miriam's concealment techniques were excellent, so much so that even Roy had struggled to detect him. It left Miriam puzzled about how he had been discovered so quickly. Perhaps he thought his skills were lacking or wondered if Roy had some kind of advanced sensory magecraft. But the truth was simpler. Roy's mastery of soul magecraft made him extraordinarily attuned to even the slightest trace of hostility. No magecraft was required. Casting a brief glance at Arcuade, who seemed concerned for Miriam, Roy chose to let the matter rest. Yes, I do have critical information regarding Roa and Orton Ross. I intended to share it with both the princess and yourself. Miriam lowered his head. Initially, he had hoped to trade this intelligence for some sort of advantage after gauging Roy's strength. But now, in the face of defeat, bargaining was no longer an option. A request made to someone who could crush him effortlessly wasn't a request at all. It was an order, plain and simple. Moreover, Roy's aura carried a subtle but palpable killing intent. Very well, then. Roy said with finality. Share everything you know. This prolonged game of cat and mouse needs to end. Yes. Miriam replied obediently. Under Roy's unrelenting pressure, Miriam left nothing out. He repeated what he had told Seal the night before, Orton Ross's plot to eliminate the princess, consolidate power, and his recruitment of other dead apostle ancestors. Among the names he mentioned were NRV and QSR Chaos, who had been slain by Shikiryu Ugi's mystic eyes of death perception, and Vlav Archangel, who had just arrived in Misaki City. Vlav Archangel. That frail lunatic has come as well? Arcuade seemed genuinely surprised, clearly familiar with the name. Yes, princess. That man would have come regardless of Orton Ross's manipulations because his intentions are anything but subtle. Miriam's face twisted in visible disgust as he uttered Vlav's name. Roy gestured for him to elaborate. Miriam obliged, his tone laced with disdain. That man carries a dreadful curse, constantly tormented by unending flames. The curse is so powerful that even other dead apostle ancestors fear it. But the agony has driven him mad. To break the curse, he seeks the hearts of the true ancestors. The hearts of true ancestors. Exactly. Miriam nodded grimly. But due to the Black Princess being under the protection of the Black and White Knights, he wouldn't dare provoke her. As for the White Princess, she's been unreachable, residing in the Millennium Castle all this time. This time, however, Orton Ross must have informed him of the princess's presence in Japan. That lunatic has likely come here to hunt her. He is hunting me? Arcuaid's expression darkened slightly, though she didn't appear particularly worried. Despite being called the princess of the true ancestors, she wasn't some fragile ornament. With over 70% of her strength restored and only certain limitations holding her back, Arcuaid didn't consider someone like Vlav a true threat. Confidence radiated from her. "Thanks to Roy, I'm almost fully recovered. If he dares make a move against me, he'll regret it." "Yes, Your Highness," Miriam acknowledged. "Knowing that you're unharmed has eased my concerns." Then, turning toward Roy with a look of earnest sincerity, Miriam spoke again. "Lord Roy, I have one more favor to ask of you." "Go on." "I wish to entrust the princess's safety to you," Miriam declared solemnly. Though Arcuaid was powerful, her pure-hearted nature left her vulnerable in ways that Miriam found deeply troubling. Her recent injuries had proven that danger was never far away. If it had happened once, it could happen again. Miriam understood the hostility of the Black Princess's forces and Ortenross's ambitions all too well. Alone, he couldn't offer the princess adequate protection. But the man before him was a different story. Not only was Roy's power unparalleled, but his cautious demeanor made him the ideal guardian. Most importantly, the princess seemed to trust him implicitly. Ever since Miriam reunited with Arcuaid, he'd noticed how she spoke of Roy, with the kind of trust and affection reserved for family. Since that's the case, entrusting the princess to his protection for the time being would put his mind at ease. "I will ensure Arcuaid's safety until she returns to the Millennium Castle." Roy nodded, agreeing to the request. "Very well, I'll leave it in your capable hands." Hearing Roy's assurance, a faint smile appeared on Miriam's face. He reached into the folds of his white clerical robe, rummaged for a moment before producing a card imbued with a faint magical glow. He handed it to Roy. "This is my card. It's recognized in many secretive circles worldwide. Whether it's among the dead apostles or within the church, my name carries some weight. With this card, you'll find many conveniences. Any expenses you incur at such places will be charged directly to my account." Though Miriam doubted Roy would ever need his connections, the card was nonetheless a gesture of goodwill. It wasn't just about capability. It was about attitude. "I understand." As expected, Roy didn't refuse. He accepted the white card, nodding slightly as he tucked it away. "Now that I've taken up enough of your time, I shouldn't overstay my welcome. I must return to the church to continue tracking Roa and Vlav. Should you have need of my assistance, please do not hesitate to contact me, Your Highness." Having shared all the information he had with Roy, Miriam dropped to one knee before Arcuaid, offering a reverent bow with precise formality. Arcuaid, ever the free spirit, found such rigid ceremony rather dull, a stark contrast to someone like Outrage. Nevertheless, she nodded slightly in acknowledgement. "I understand, Miriam." "As you wish, Your Highness." With that, Miriam rose to his feet and departed swiftly. As Miriam's figure disappeared into the distance, Arcuaid's gaze lingered, her expression subtly melancholic. She knew Miriam's capabilities well. With his help, they would surely locate Roa and Vlav soon. But that also meant his little interlude was drawing to a close. She, too, would need to return to the Millennium Castle. Yet, why did her heart feel heavy with reluctance? This had always been the plan. So why did it feel so hard to say goodbye? During this journey, unlike her usual outings to pursue Roa, she had spent time with Shiki and Roy. There was a selfish part of her that cherished these days. She didn't want this time with them to end so quickly. But seeing Miriam's resolve and Roy's serious demeanor, she understood. This journey was nearing its conclusion. Once Roa was defeated, she would return to the Millennium Castle and resume her slumber. Staying with everyone indefinitely might one day lead to the same catastrophe that once unfolded in the castle, when she lost control and hurt the people she held dear. Though she believed Roy would undoubtedly stop her if such a day came, she couldn't bear the thought of causing him grief or being a burden. Returning to the Millennium Castle was the best choice for everyone. "What's got you so lost in thought?" Roy's voice snapped her out of her reverie. He had noticed the shifting emotions on her face. "Ah. It's nothing." Caught off guard, Arcuaid quickly masked her emotions, forcing her usual cheerful demeanor. But under Roy's watchful gaze, her attempt felt clumsy. Roy gently placed a hand on her head, his voice soft yet firm. "Don't keep everything bottled up. If something's bothering you, just tell me. Aren't we friends?" "Friends?" Arcuaid's lips curled into a faint smile, though her heart remained conflicted. "Yes, of course. You, Shiki, and I. We're all friends." And it was precisely because they were friends that she had to leave. She would never allow herself to harm her friends. Chapter 139, 139 Dead Apostle, please, I beg you. Help me. In the living room, Shiki Tano knelt heavily on the floor, pleading desperately with Roy. Roy had only just returned to their base and hadn't yet had the chance to share the day's findings with Shiki Ryougi, Oko Ozaki, or the others. Out of nowhere, Shikitano rushed out of the room, and with a loud thud, fell to his knees before him. This sudden display left Roy momentarily stunned. Groveling right at the start? What happened? Where are Shiki and Oko? Roy quickly helped the kneeling Shikitano to his feet, his tone calm yet concerned. Don't panic. Tell me everything in detail first, and I'll see how I can help you. Roy, there's a dead apostle scent in the air. Standing nearby, Arcuaid sniffed the air lightly, her sharp senses picking up an unusual trace. It was faint but unmistakable. A mixture of human and dead apostle auras, both so weak that only someone deeply attuned to such energies would notice. And there was no one more sensitive to the scent of dead apostles than Arcuaid. Sensory reinforcement magecraft. Hearing this, Roy sharpened his own senses, spreading them outward. Sure enough, he too detected the faint, lingering presence of a dead apostle. It was coming from deep within the room. Without hesitation, he drew his black key and infused it with magical energy, preparing to teach the intruding dead apostle a lesson it wouldn't forget. Wait. Please don't hurt her. She's my classmate. She's not a bad person. Seeing Roy ready his weapon, Shikitano panicked, shouting desperately to stop him. You're aware you brought a dead apostle into the base? Roy turned to him with a raised brow. I had no other choice. You're the only person I could think of who might be able to save her. Understanding his sister's temperament, Shikitano knew that bringing his classmate home would only infuriate Akaya. Moreover, he doubted she would show any mercy to someone who had been turned into a dead apostle. And truthfully, he didn't know how he could even face his family right now. Left with no options, he had placed all his hopes on Roy. The mysterious and seemingly capable man before him. Surely Roy would be able to save Yumizuka Satsuki. This belief burned in Shikitano's heart. You're saying the dead apostle in that room is your classmate? Why yes. Shikitano's voice trembled as he answered. What's her name? Is she important to you? Her name is Yumizuka Satsuki, and she's a very dear friend of mine. His voice was firm, unwavering. Then, bowing deeply, he pleaded again, please. Please save her. I understand. Roy glanced at the young man, who was on the verge of tears, and let out a long sigh. He decided to lend him a hand. From their brief exchange, Roy had pieced together the situation. Someone Shikitano cared about had been turned into a dead apostle. Out of desperation, he had sought help here. However, even though Roy agreed to help, he had no guarantee of success. He'd never heard of anyone reversing the transformation of a dead apostle back into a human. Once a person became a dead apostle, they gradually lost their humanity and sanity, consumed by the vampire instincts taking root within them. Eventually, hunger would drive them to surrender to their bloodlust, turning on friends and family alike. For this reason, Roy's approach to dead apostles was simple: eliminate on sight. But if the transformation was recent and no harm had yet been done, he was willing to attempt a rescue. Arcuaid, stay outside and keep this guy from barging in. I'll handle things inside. If he tries to force his way in, just hold him down. Understood. One more thing. Roy turned back to Shikitano, whose mental state was clearly fraying, and said, I'll do my best to help your classmate. But let me be clear. I can't promise success. If I determine that she cannot be saved, I will purify her before she has the chance to harm anyone. I'll grant her release before she succumbs to her bloodlust. Do you understand, Shikitano? Release. The implication that Yumizuka Satsuki might be killed made Shikitano's already fragile mind snap. His eyes widened, and he began shouting frantically, No. Don't do that. Please, there must be another way. There has to be. In his desperation, he tried to push past Roy and rush into the room. But Roy raised a hand, signaling Arcuaid to intervene. Clink. Arcuaid acted swiftly. With a mere gesture, several materialized chains wrapped tightly around Shikitano's limbs, lifting him off the ground with ease. Knowing firsthand the deadly potential of Shikitano's mystic eyes of death perception, Arcuaid took no chances. Before he could get close, she summoned more chains to bind him securely, keeping a wary distance. She had to respect the danger those eyes posed. Whether it was his or Shiki Ryougi's, such eyes were terrifying weapons. In his current unstable state, Roy couldn't risk letting Shikitano run loose, so he entrusted Arcuaid to restrain him. However, Shikitano's tenacity exceeded Roy's expectations. Even with his limbs tightly bound, he continued to struggle. A concealed knife slipped from his sleeve into his grasp. Gripping the blade, his ice blue eyes locked onto the chains holding him, and he thrust the knife toward a critical point. Snap! The sound of metal breaking echoed through the air. The chains Arcuaid had conjured were severed by Shikitano's precise strike. How is this even possible? Arcuaid's eyes widened as she locked gazes with Shikitano's icy blue stare. A sharp pain coursed through her body, and an inexplicable fear gripped her heart. The memory of being severed by the mystic eyes of death perception resurfaced vividly, paralyzing her for a moment. Her body froze instinctively. Out of my way. Shikitano wasn't trying to hurt anyone. He was simply overwhelmed by the fear that Roy might follow through on his words and kill Yumizuka Satsuki. Having recently recalled the deaths of his father, mother, and family, Shiki's mental state was already at its breaking point. This final blow shattered his ability to think rationally. His mystic eyes of death perception flared to life, and with the knife clutched tightly in his hand, he charged recklessly toward the room. He was determined to protect Yumizuka Satsuki with everything he had. This damn kid. Always causing trouble. Watching Shikitano dash toward him with no regard for his own safety, Roy furrowed his brow. A flicker of anger flashed in his eyes. There was no time for lengthy explanations. Roy unleashed a surge of overwhelming magical energy. A powerful gust of wind, brimming with oppressive force, slammed Shikitano to the ground. Effortlessly kicking the knife out of his hand, Roy stood over him, his expression icy. Arcuaid, restrain him. Disarm him completely and cover his eyes. Without sight, the mystic eyes of death perception are useless. Understood. Finally snapping out of her daze after being stunned by the mystic eyes once again, Arcuaid wasted no time. This time, she didn't underestimate him. The moment Shikitano hit the ground, she teleported behind him and pinned him down, locking his arms in a firm hold. This time, she opted against using her usual materialized constructs. Instead, she restrained him with her own hands to ensure he couldn't escape. But Roy wasn't satisfied with mere restraints. Watching Shiki's frenzied eyes and unstable demeanor, he sighed and reached for the nearest object on the table. A flower vase. Without hesitation, he brought it down hard on Shikitano's head. Smash. The vase shattered on impact, and Shikitano's vision went dark as he lost consciousness. Finally, some peace. Roy exhaled in relief as he stared at Shikitano, now lying motionless on the floor. But he didn't allow himself to fully relax. There was still the matter of the dead apostle waiting in the other room. Judging by the aura emanating from within, the transformation was already complete. Although Roy had already realized this harsh reality earlier, it didn't make the task ahead any less troublesome. After this, he'd have to make Shikitano sign some sort of servitude contract. That boy owed him far too much. Chapter 140, 140 Soul Transformation. The door opened. No. More accurately, it was broken down. Bang. With a single punch, Roy smashed through the door, sending both it and the disoriented girl behind it crashing into the wall. Her body was unnaturally tough. While the door shattered, she remained unscathed. This resilience, combined with her current state, was far from human. Ah. I'll devour you. I'll devour you all. Just as he had suspected, Yumizuka Satsuki's transformation into a dead apostle was complete. The reason he hadn't broken down the door earlier was because this girl, Yumizuka Satsuki, had been using sheer willpower to suppress the vampiric instincts of a dead apostle. But for an ordinary human girl, how could mere willpower possibly overcome the overwhelming urge to feed? Her defeat was inevitable. It was only a matter of time. She had likely held on this long to protect Shikitano, who was in the same room. But now, it seemed she had finally succumbed to the instincts of a dead apostle. Pinned against the wall by Roy's punch, Yumizuka Satsuki opened her crimson eyes. With clawed hands, she lunged at him, desperate to claim the blood she so desperately craved. If she had been a stranger, Roy would have eliminated her the moment she showed hostility, using his black keys to purify her. However, as he recalled the desperate eyes of Shikitano and his tearful pleas when Roy had entered the room, a memory of his own powerlessness surfaced. For a moment, his resolve softened. Fine. That boy's life was already tragic enough. To lose a friend before his very eyes would be too cruel. Roy decided to help him, if only this once. It was as Merlin had once said to him. Even after becoming a magician, your nature hasn't changed despite the growth in your power. You remain as gentle as you were in the beginning. Compared to Amiya Garitsugu, you're the one who truly embodies an ally of justice. An ally of justice. Roy had no interest in such titles. He was simply unable to ignore the cries for help of those before him. At his core, he was just a soft-hearted fool. His senpais in the Fujimura group had often warned him about his kindness. Being so compassionate will only get you hurt someday. But getting hurt? He didn't care. This was the path he had chosen, and he would walk it to the end, no matter the cost. With a self-deprecating chuckle, Roy focused on the girl before him. He did have a method to reverse the transformation of a dead apostle, albeit with a slim chance of success. Still, hope remained. Yet, even if he succeeded, could what he saved still be called human? Should he really use the third magic to transform this girl? Was it the right thing to do? But doing nothing was definitely the wrong thing. Without further hesitation, Roy raised his left hand. A brilliant azure glow lit his eyes as his mystic eyes activated. First. Boil, my blood. Fervor, my sanguis. In mere moments, the mercury-like liquid silver sword, forged from volume and hydrargyrum, took the shape of sharp stakes that pierced Yumizuka Satsuki's limbs, pinning her to the ground. Ah! The searing pain only intensified her frenzy. Blood. Give me blood. Ignoring her screams, Roy knelt to begin his attempt. His magic circuits activated, converting his energy. The third magic began to unfold, and a radiant white light manifested in his hand. Looking at the girl, who was now entirely consumed by the instincts of a dead apostle, Roy hesitated one last time. If possible, he never wanted to resort to this technique. The light was the very miracle Magus had obsessed over. The third magic, capable of transforming a human into an immortal being free of conflict. If she had completely lost her soul and tasted human blood, she would be beyond saving. But if she was innocent, Roy was willing to try. After all, what could be worse than becoming a dead apostle? No matter the outcome. Whether the ritual failed and she remained a dead apostle, or he succeeded in transforming her into an ageless, immortal soul, he would ensure her suffering ended. And afterward, I will send the true culprit, Roa, to hell. I promise you that. Your name is Yumizuka Satsuki, isn't it? This will be my first attempt at soul transformation. I hope you can endure it. Looking at the struggling, pitiful girl pinned to the ground, Roy finally cast aside all hesitation. He placed the sphere of light onto her head. The magical circuits across his arm flared to life, and an immense surge of power flowed through him, causing the light to shine even brighter. Heavens, feel, soul transformation. The hand bathed in radiant white light pressed firmly against Yumizuka Satsuki's head. Ah! Ah! The process of forcibly altering her soul was agonizing, a torment even a dead apostle could hardly endure. Yet Roy paid no heed, focusing entirely on controlling the transformation. Seeing the soul as a lump of clay. Analyze, infiltrate, then reshape. Soul, body, emotions. Preserve the fragments of humanity still lingering within this girl, while using the third magic to purge the impurities that had taken root. Transform the soul to reconstruct the body. Both processes had to happen simultaneously, ensuring her core identity remained intact while saving her life. It was an exceptionally delicate and challenging task. Although Arcuaid had no idea what Roy was specifically doing, the sheer concentration etched on his face was enough to tell her that he was sparing no effort to save this girl. From her perspective, the impurities coursing through Yumizuka Satsuki's body were slowly dissolving under Roy's manipulation. The radiant white light flowing from his palm was systematically replacing every corrupted part. Could it really be possible to reverse the transformation into a dead apostle? Arcuaid found herself astonished. To forcibly perform a secondary transformation on someone who had already become a dead apostle. This was beyond anything she had ever heard of. Yet, here Roy was, defying reason and achieving the impossible. Seconds turned into minutes. Pinned to the ground, Yumizuka Satsuki's struggles grew increasingly violent. But no matter how frantically she fought, Roy's relentless suppression left her powerless to resist. She could only endure as Roy continued pouring his magic into her body. Finally, as the process neared its conclusion, Yumizuka Satsuki's thrashing began to subside. Even the crimson ferocity in her eyes gradually gave way to a soft, serene white light. Her spirit had reached its absolute limit under Roy's meticulous efforts. The impurities of the dead apostle within her were pushed to their very brink by the third magic. Ah! Suddenly, her eyes rolled back, and she let out an incomprehensible cry before collapsing into unconsciousness, her mind completely blank. Did it fail? The scene unfolding before her caused Arcuaid, who had been observing from the side, to tense with unease. No. It worked. Lowering his head to examine the girl whose soul he had partially transformed, Roy exhaled a breath of relief. The good news, Yumizuka Satsuki's transformation into a dead apostle had been successfully halted, sparing her from becoming one of Roa's kin. The bad news, she had now become Roy's familiar. A third of her soul had been transformed, stripping her of certain emotions while endowing her with a supernatural nature far removed from humanity. She was now his first familiar. Whether she could return to a normal life remained uncertain, even to him. This outcome, while far from perfect, was still infinitely better than leaving her as a dead apostle. In any case, the decision of how to proceed would ultimately be hers to make upon waking. If she was willing, Roy considered bringing her to the Ryougi family for training. If she chose otherwise, he would not force her to go. After all, wasn't it Shikitano's desperate plea that led to this? If that were the case, then it was only right that he should bear responsibility for her moving forward. Didn't he say she was someone important to him? If so, perhaps it was time for him to take another step forward. Given her newfound supernatural nature, she would inevitably attract the moonlit world phenomena. Her life was now destined to be anything but ordinary. If she wished for a peaceful existence, she would need to either become a Magus herself or have someone to protect her. If it was the former, that would be ideal. But if she chose the latter, Shikitano, you'd better be ready to take responsibility. With that thought, Roy gently picked up the unconscious Yumizuka Satsuki and carried her to the infirmary to rest. As for Shikitano, who Roy had knocked out earlier, he was now strung up by chains courtesy of Arcuaid. She dragged him along into the infirmary as well. Chapter 141 Overture of Destruction born of darkness, nourished by the flesh and mana as per the envoy's invitation. Grow, sprout. Child of Inash. With a chant steeped in obscure, ominous syllables, the crimson seed, along with the heap of flesh and blood at his feet, was ruthlessly kicked into the crevice of the earth. Rumble. A tremor surged beneath him, violently shaking the ground. The forest around him began to twist and distort, as though coming alive. It seems to be working better than expected. With this, not even the magician of the fifth magic can escape unscathed. After completing his preparations, Roa lifted his gaze toward the dense forest in the distance, a faint smile playing on his lips. The seed had been planted, and the cage had been constructed. Now, it was only a matter of time before the prey fell neatly into his trap. With the first step of his plan complete, Roa glanced at the elite dead apostles behind him, a smile still lingering. All right, everyone, proceed according to the plan. Any questions? The dead apostles said nothing, merely bowing their heads in submission. These elite soldiers, raised by the White Wing Lord, bore unparalleled loyalty to their master. Orders were absolute, even if it meant marching to their deaths without hesitation. Though their true master was Antroa, the White Wing Lord had temporarily ceded command to him. As such, their loyalty extended to him without question. Nodding slightly in approval, Roa observed as the dead apostles began their movements. The group divided into two teams. One heading toward the witch's mansion nestled within the forest, the other making its way toward Misaki town. Their actions were swift and efficient. A truly elite force of dead apostles. Even in a suicide mission, there's not a shred of hesitation. Roa muttered as he watched from the hillside, clicking his tongue in both admiration and regret. It was a shame. If he could have brainwashed them, he would have seized the opportunity to claim such a formidable force as his own. But alas, their loyalty was bound by the White Wing Lord's spell, rendering them impervious to manipulation. Since that was the case, Roa decided to treat them as expendable currency. After all, this so-called cooperation was nothing more than mutual exploitation. When Arcuaid was finally eliminated, these allies would be the first to turn against him. The White Wing Lord, self-proclaimed King of Dead Apostles, would surely seek to eliminate him. Vlav Archangel already bore irreconcilable hatred toward him and wouldn't hesitate to strike. Thus, even as he advanced his plans, Roa remained vigilant, constantly preparing his escape routes. From his investigations, Roa had learned that the magician of the fifth magic, Oko Ozaki, shared a close bond with the so-called pure witch, Alice Kaunji. Years ago, they had fought side by side in this very city against Oko's elder sister, Tuko. Their relationship was one of unshakable trust, forged through life and death struggles. If Oko learned her friend was in danger, she would undoubtedly return to the forest without hesitation. As for the witch herself, her power was no trifling matter. These dead apostles couldn't kill her in a short time. But then, Roa's goal was never to take her life. All he needed was to force Oko to retreat and return here. And under no circumstances could they kill the witch. Such an act would provoke Oko into an all-out, no-holds-barred conflict, which would jeopardize everything. This was only the first step. Once the magician of the fifth magic witnessed her friend under attack, her rage would ignite. She would annihilate the dead apostles and rescue her companion. But Roa's real trump card wasn't these mere dead apostle forces. It was. He glanced at the writhing tendrils of the forest behind him, his lips curling into a grin. Are you hungry already, freshly born one? Ha ha ha, don't worry. Soon, you'll feast to your heart's content. Take root in the ley lines and absorb mana. Devour the flesh and blood of this land. All of it. All of it is yours. Soon, you'll grow into a forest of your own. And then, even the magician of the fifth magic will be yours. Ha 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 ha. Roa spread his arms wide, his laughter echoing madly as his gaze swept over the forest below. Everything was falling perfectly into place. Vlav, Arten Ross, Meram, and even Arcuaid. They were all mere pieces on his chessboard. Beneath the layers of his intricate schemes lay his ultimate goal, the perfect body. With the Insburn family's legacy as a foundation and the ability to wield a reality marble, Its power could even suppress NRV and QSR chaos. This was the most ideal vessel he had encountered in centuries. A body so perfect it surpassed all others. His knowledge combined with that body's strength would elevate him to become the most powerful existence of any era. When that day came, he would reclaim everything he had lost. Taking one last, lingering look at the forest below, Roa turned and walked away. The time had come to initiate the next phase of his plan. Meanwhile, on the other side, Vlad Archangel had already arrived at the bustling heart of Misaki town. Seated in a quaint cafe, he sipped his coffee, though his trembling hands and restless gaze betrayed the turmoil within. Cold. So cold. Unbearably cold. He murmured the words repeatedly, a mantra escaping his lips. His striking European features and noble aura caught the attention of passers-by, many pausing to steal a glance. He's so handsome. He looks like a dark knight straight out of a twisted fairy tale. Is he a foreigner? Or maybe a celebrity? Let's go say hi. Maybe we can get a photo with him. A lively crowd began to gather around the street corner where Vlad sat. Young women, enchanted by his striking appearance, eagerly approached him. Some even ventured to invite him out for a stroll, their confidence evident in their practiced flirtations. Cold. So cold. Unbearably cold. But Vlad paid them no mind. His head remained lowered, his whispers of frigid despair uninterrupted. The pain gnawing at his body threatened to shatter his sanity. Were it not for the lack of instructions from Roa, he would have long succumbed to his primal urges, feasting on human flesh to alleviate his suffering. Cold. So cold. Cold? But it's 20 degrees Celsius today. Is he sick or something? The women around him exchanged confused glances. Dressed in light, summery clothing, they found the weather comfortably warm, even a touch stifling. How could this foreigner possibly feel cold? When their casual chatter failed to elicit a response, some of the bolder girls took things further. One slid onto the bench beside him, draping an arm over his shoulder and whispering in his ear. If you're feeling cold, handsome, how about coming over to my place? My bed's plenty warm. Haha, yeah. Come and have fun with us. You'll warm up in no time. Laughter and playful banter erupted around him, but Vlad remained impassive, letting their words wash over him like an icy wind. Then, suddenly, his body stiffened. He raised his hand abruptly, his gaze snapping toward a distant point. A row of pale figures dressed in immaculate white suits had appeared, standing in perfect formation. The signal had come. At last. At long last, he didn't have to endure anymore. Vlad rose swiftly, seizing the arm of the nearest girl and pulling her into his embrace. His face buried deep into her neck, his movements firm yet unrelenting. The girl gasped, her breath hitching. Wow. So bold, handsome. Finally ready to play along? Let's all warm up together. Ha ha ha. While the crowd continued to cheer, unaware of the grim reality, blood began to drip from the corners of Vlad's mouth. Yearning for warmth. Then let it begin. Straightening slightly, he let the lifeless, desiccated body of the girl slip from his grasp. His eyes turned to the now horrified onlookers, and a satisfied, almost euphoric smile spread across his face. Indeed, in the face of this unending cold, only the heat of blood could grant him fleeting solace. Join me. Join me in this inferno of ecstasy. Before anyone could flee or even react, serpentine flames erupted from the ground, spiraling skyward. Screams filled the air as countless people were consumed, their forms reduced to mere fuel for the ravenous blaze. At the center of the chaos, Vlad closed his eyes, a rare moment of peace washing over him. At last. It's warm. He whispered the words softly, as though to himself, amidst the crackling roar of the inferno. Chapter 142, 142 7th Seat. Misaki Town Outskirts. In Kuonji Estate. Suddenly, flames erupted, consuming the surrounding forest. Trees, animals, and even passing travelers were reduced to charred remains in an instant. The wildfire seemed to descend from nowhere, suffocating the air with its searing heat and choking black smoke. Explosions echoed, turning the serene forest into chaos. In mere minutes, the place was transformed into a blazing inferno. No, perhaps purgatory would be a more fitting term. Climbing out from beneath the bridge where she had sought refuge in the river, Shikiryu-ugi's disoriented thoughts were disrupted as she stared at the fiery canopy above. The sight of the forest, now engulfed in a roaring blaze, left her momentarily stunned. Her last clear memory was of a casual stroll with Tuko through Misaki Town, searching for signs of dead apostles as they often did. With Roy off dealing with dead apostles on his own, accompanied by Arcueid, whose swiftness made her an ideal partner, Shiki and Tuko had taken a more relaxed approach to their hunt. The day had been uneventful until Oko contacted them, reporting dead apostle activity near Alice's manor. Concerned that something might happen, Oko had headed over to investigate. Initially, Both Shiki and Tuko were unconcerned. They were confident in Oko's and Alice's abilities. No ordinary dead apostle would stand a chance against the combined force of those two. Still, Shiki had insisted on going to check. Wandering aimlessly through the city had grown tedious, and the prospect of encountering a dead apostle excited her. She relished the thought of cutting down those disgusting creatures with her blade. Tuko had not objected and drove her to the witch's estate. That's when everything went awry. As they entered the forest, charred corpses, dead apostles in various stages of combustion, suddenly swarmed their vehicle. Though none of them posed much of a threat, Shiki and Tuko dispatched them with ease. But then, two strange figures appeared. Before they could make sense of the situation, an overwhelming wave of heat assaulted them. The fire unleashed by one of the figures was no ordinary blaze. Its intensity melted rocks and ignited the entire forest. Unprepared for such an attack, Shiki and Tuko were forced into a hasty retreat. They managed to escape. Briefly. The two mysterious figures did not pursue them, but as Tuko sped across a bridge, an explosion ripped through the vehicle. The memory came rushing back. Tuko had been obliterated, her body blown to pieces before Shiki's eyes. Only Avalon's protection had spared Shiki from the same fate. Reaching for the faint golden glow emanating from her chest, Shiki clenched her teeth against the searing pain. Avalon had saved her life, but the fire and explosion had left her gravely injured. Severe burns marred her skin, and she could feel the sharp agony of broken bones beneath. Yet Avalon was already working to heal her. How careless! Anger and self-recrimination bubbled within her. How could she have been ambushed so easily? Her previous self would never have let her guard down. Had she grown complacent, relying too much on Roy and Tuko's presence to shield her? Was it the praise she received after defeating a few dead apostles? Or the thrill of joining the fight against the 27 dead apostle ancestors that had dulled her instincts? Without him, she had been reduced to this pathetic state. Were it not for the scabbard he had entrusted to her, she would be dead. Tuko might have a way to return, but what about her? Was she doomed to pay for her arrogance with her life? The thought filled her with unease, but also a burning resolve. Biting back her frustration, Shiki used a basic healing spell to stabilize her wounds, leaving Avalon to handle the rest. She discarded the shattered remains of her phone and retrieved her scorched mithril blade. Her icy blue eyes fixed on the distant pillar of smoke rising from the direction of the Kuonji estate. She had made her decision. This time, she would see it through. No matter what it took, she would finish this. This time, she would kill them. The Kuonji estate. Within the Kuonji estate, the domain of the pure witch, Alice Kuonji found herself in dire straits. As usual, she had sent her familiars into the city to track dead apostle activity. However, an unusual surge of magical energy around her manor caught her attention. Sensing the potential danger, Alice swiftly contacted her close friend Oko for assistance and focused entirely on fortifying the workshop's defenses. Yet, even her pride in her magical workshop proved futile. After the last incident involving Roy, her defenses had once again been breached. This time in a spectacular explosion. Her attackers abandoned all conventional strategies. Charred, corpse-like dead apostles carrying high-yield explosives stormed her workshop grounds, functioning as suicidal infantry. A relentless cascade of detonations erupted, the infernos carving a fiery breach into her fortified boundaries. Then came the pale dead apostles in white suits. With formidable agility and teamwork, they dismantled her spells and forced her into an untenable position. Were it not for Oko's rapid arrival, the situation would have been catastrophic. But outside, the dead apostles emerged in unending waves, stepping forth from the inferno. This was no ordinary fire. It was a cursed flame. These dead apostles bore the mark of endless immolation as if burned 1,000 times over in some otherworldly furnace. Like a macabre procession of demons, they marched relentlessly toward the Kuonji estate, spreading fire and terror in their wake. Oko's expression darkened as she raised her hand, obliterating several charging dead apostles with a volley of magical blasts. How many lives were sacrificed to create this army? Where did these monsters even come from? Though she was still near the forest, Oko did not doubt that chaos had already engulfed Misaki town. This attack was premeditated. Not only had the assailants set the entire forest ablaze, but they had also established a barrier to cut off escape and communication, severing signals and isolating them from the outside world. This ensured that neither Roy nor the church could detect the crisis or intervene in time. To desecrate life in such a way. Oko's eyes burned with fury as her fingertips became magical projectiles, mercilessly harvesting the lives of the low-ranking dead apostles. For someone of her caliber, these enemies posed little challenge. She could deal with them quickly and go assist Shiki and Tuko. But of course, Roa had anticipated this. He had prepared a special gift for the fifth magician. One that would ensure she and Alice remain tied down. Boom. A deafening rumble shattered the air. Giant green vines burst from the ground, tearing through the earth and lifting the forest and flames into the air. Amid the fractured terrain, a colossal presence stirred, its countless tendrils reaching out to seize anything alive within the forest. Animals and dead apostles alike, caught unprepared, were ensnared by the vines. In an instant, their life force was drained, leaving behind only ash. The sight froze Oko and Alice in place, their eyes widening in recognition. No. It couldn't be. Everyone, fall back. Wandersnatch, retreat now. Alice's voice trembled as she recalled her familiars. This was a monstrosity that emerged every 50 years, a creature beyond the capabilities of mere humans to oppose. Its appearance heralded seas of corpses and rivers of blood. Its name was Forest of Inash. An indestructible and inexorable entity. But this creature's movements were supposed to be under the strict surveillance of the church. Every appearance had been meticulously documented and controlled. And yet, here it was, unaccounted for. What's going on? Why is this monster here? Oko and Alice, seasoned in the occult, instantly recognized the true nature of the forest. Forest of Inash. The seventh seat of the dead apostle ancestors. A sentient, predatory life form, it emerged roughly every 50 years to feast upon humanity. Its immense magical power was channeled to nourish the fruit it bore deep within. If left unchecked, it would only be a matter of time before this monstrosity performed a blood sacrifice on an entire city. But why had it appeared so silently in Misaki town? Why hadn't the church noticed its movements? There was no doubt. Someone had orchestrated this from the shadows. Roa? He was the most likely suspect. But could Roa truly control such a creature? Did he possess that kind of power? No, there was no time to dwell on speculation. Oko and Alice exchanged a grim look. They knew what had to be done. If Inash were allowed to grow unchecked, the consequences would be catastrophic. They could escape, but the people of Misaki town's outskirts, and innocent civilians could not. If they didn't stop it here and now, all would be lost. Helping other teams would have to wait. For now, they would have to hold their ground and pray for their reinforcements. Chapter 143, 143 The hellish drama. Meanwhile, the situation in Misaki town was just as dire as Oko had predicted. Fierce flames raged across the city. The entire northern district had transformed into a relentless inferno. Hellfire scorched multiple streets, and crimson rivers, tainted with malice, flowed beneath the feet of every unfortunate soul. In mere breaths, countless residents of these districts spontaneously combusted, their charred remains sinking into fiery streams. Yet, from the abyssal depths of hell, innumerable cursed creatures emerged, their bodies wreathed in flames. They carried with them an insatiable hatred for the living and an animalistic hunger for flesh, relentlessly charging at the surviving inhabitants. Flames. Fangs. Blood. The massacre unfolded amidst the once vibrant neon-lit streets. Ah! Monsters! Stay away from me. Don't eat me. Please, I beg you. Ah! It's the devil. The devil himself. Someone, save me. God, where are you? A cacophony of screams and tragedies painted a nightmarish scene across the city's northern sector. At the Tano family residence, the situation was no better. It too had fallen victim to an assault by flame-clad dead apostles and lay in ruins. In the smoldering remains, Akaya Tano, the current head of the family, stood her ground, glaring furiously at the figure emerging from the fire. Through gritted teeth, she spat his name. Shiki. Ha 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 ha, it's been a while, hasn't it, Akaya? While I may have the face of Shiki Tano and his memories, I am not the Shiki Tano you once knew. And you, Kohaku. I remember all too well what you did to me back then. Roa's gaze fell upon the red-haired maid standing in the Tano courtyard. His eyes glimmered with murderous intent. So, die obediently. You, and the entire Tano family. With a wave of his hand, Roa commanded his army of dead apostles to attack. You won't get away with this. Seeing the encroaching horde, Akaya stepped in front of Kohaku, shielding her with fierce determination. Lady Akaya. Ha 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 ha. Even on the brink of death, you waste your energy protecting others, Akaya. Watching this absurd display, Roa burst into mocking laughter. Don't worry. It's not just her. None of you, not even a single member of the Tano family, will escape tonight. You will all serve as offerings to the flames. As Roa's words echoed, he ceased his banter. Spreading his palm, he conjured a sharp blade of blood and lunged toward Akaya with deadly intent. The flame surged higher, boiling with malevolence. The attack had come without warning. No one could have imagined that someone would dare act so brazenly within the city. Chaos. Utter chaos. These damned lunatics had shattered the unspoken rules of the supernatural world. Sensing the blazing inferno engulfing the city and the suffocating presence of dead apostles, Miriam Solomon arrived swiftly with Seal in tow. Standing on the edge of an endless sea of crimson flames, Meram merely furrowed his brow, while Seal's face betrayed her inability to remain composed. Transforming humans into dead apostles in plain view and igniting fires across multiple districts. Have they completely lost their minds? Actions like these trampled upon the laws upheld by both the Holy Church and the moonlit world. How many lives would be lost because of this? The unfolding hellscape stirred memories of past tragedies within Seal. Her hand, clutching a black key, trembled involuntarily. "Stay calm, Seal," Meram said, casting a brief glance at the girl beside him. His tone was steady, his expression placid. "We've arrived in time, and enforcers have already been deployed to establish a containment zone around the area. We've done everything we can. Now, all that's left is to stay composed and hunt the dead apostles." Compared to Seal, Meram, whose lifespan spanned an indeterminate length, was far more composed. The scene before them was horrifying, no doubt, but to him, it was simply another instance of horror. He had witnessed worse, deeper visions of hell in his time. The real challenge lay in managing the aftermath. Meram had already formulated plans to manipulate public perception through magecraft and conceal the truth. What truly concerned him, however, was the safety of the princess. A calamity of this scale was far beyond what someone like Vlad Archangel could achieve alone. Meram was certain that Roa was involved somehow, though he could not yet discern the role he played in this catastrophe. An unease gnawed at Meram's heart. "Lord Roy, I hope you can truly protect Her Highness. Where are you? Where are you? Princess. Princess. Please, answer my call." A figure trudged through the blazing inferno, moving slowly amidst the city reduced to scorched earth. He was a man exuding a morbid beauty. His frail body draped in a black coat, his pale face devoid of color, and his hollow eyes utterly lifeless. His white hair fell loosely over his shoulders, completing the image of someone entirely out of place with the world around him. Though surrounded by roaring flames, there was no heat radiating from him. Simply standing amidst the fire, his presence created an almost palpable sense of contrast. "Cold. Frigid," he muttered incessantly under his breath. "Cold. So cold. This world is freezing. Flames. I need flames to warm me." Despite standing in the heart of the inferno, the man felt as if trapped in an ice-bound abyss. This chill wasn't merely physical. It pierced his soul. His thoughts slowed, his consciousness seemed frozen. Only blood could warm his heart. Only blood could bring him solace. But it wasn't enough. It was never enough. The blood of ordinary humans was like a drop in the ocean to him. Only the blood of two specific individuals could bring him salvation. The White Princess of the true ancestors. Arcuaid Brunestitude. His instincts screamed that her blood alone could thaw the frost in his soul, could bring his frozen spirit back to life. Driven by this desperate longing, he had followed Ortenross's suggestion. He abandoned his lover, traveled from Europe to Japan, and entered into a dangerous alliance with Roa. All to hunt down Arcuaid. He had to be saved. He had to break the curse that bound his soul. "Princess. Where are you?" Vlad Archangel's voice echoed in madness, the icy grip on his soul and his primal yearning having shattered what little rationality he had left, plunging him into insanity. Boom. As if responding to his madness. Or perhaps mocking his delusions. A crimson storm swept across the horizon, tearing through everything in its path. Full power mana discharge. In an instant, the crimson tempest surged forward, ravaging the land with unchecked ferocity. Under its onslaught, the blazing streets, the charred corpses of dead apostles, and even the ground beneath were ground into dust by the sheer force of magical energy. The torrent of power pierced through the flames, striking Vlad Archangel's body with relentless pressure, hurling him backward. The force blasted through streets, demolishing walls in its wake, until his body finally came to a halt after colliding with several buildings. The raging storm subsided, leaving silence in its wake. Staggering to his feet amid the ruins, Vlad Archangel brushed himself off. Thanks to the flames that had cloaked his body beforehand, much of the damage had been mitigated, leaving him relatively unscathed. But something, or rather, someone, had appeared. An immense magical presence now loomed close. His eyes lit up with a mix of excitement and desperation as he traced the magical flow back to its source. But the figure he saw wasn't her. Standing atop a lamppost, silhouetted against the night, was not Arcuaid. His eyes widened in disbelief. Not the princess. Not Arcuaid. Why? 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 Roa had promised that if he followed the plan, Arcuaid would come. So why wasn't she here? Why? Where have you hidden Arcuaid? His frenzied shouts erupted as his sanity unraveled completely. Hand over the princess. Glaring at the figure on the lamppost, Vlad roared with fury. The sea of flames roared back, surging higher and fiercer in response to his unbridled rage. Chapter 144, 144 Unfair. Hand over the princess. Ah. Despite wreaking havoc in Misaki town according to the plan, Vlad Archangel still hadn't seen the figure he so desperately longed for. His descent into madness was complete. As his emotions spiraled out of control, the already blazing inferno around him erupted into a surging tide of flames. The searing waves, carrying temperatures capable of melting steel with ease, surged toward Roy. Roar. In an instant, the concrete road beneath their feet liquefied into a crimson river of fire. Steel structures along the streets melted into molten streams, while the charred remains of corpses crushed by the earlier magical storm dissolved into pools of blood, merging with the fiery river. More scorched corpses began to crawl out from the shadows of the streets, rejoining the relentless ranks of dead apostles. Hand her over? I think I should knock some sense into you first. Faced with Vlad Archangel's impotent rage,